Chapter 49. Capture her. Dustless swept a glance at Wildbone and no longer paid attention to her. She was already a turtle in a jar and no one could save her. The remaining monsters of Nuliang group looked at each other and surrounded Wildbone and the other monsters. The situation was reversed in an instant. Remember, I want her alive. Dustless turned around and left. Nuliang group was already in ruins and if he didn't rebuild it, he would have to sleep soundly. This kind of thing was a piece of cake for Dustless. As a user of the wood style, how could this kind of trivial matter be a problem for him? Boom boom boom, the ground cracked open and all kinds of thick wood rose from the ground. All of them evolved into houses according to Dustless's will. In just a few minutes, a grander Nuliang group headquarters appeared in front of everyone. It was more majestic than before and was thousands of square meters in size. It was hard to imagine that it was built in just a few minutes. At the same time, Wildbone was also captured alive. As for the other cadres of Feathered Fox, they were all killed. The reason why she was kept alive was because she was relatively valuable. Sorry, Lord Dustless, one of them escaped. After that, Bull Demon ran over with an ashamed expression. He didn't even dare to lift his head. It's fine as long as it's not Wildbone and Violent Xidigarbe. Dustless didn't care. The other monsters were all small fries. Only those two guys were considered to have some status. I'm really sorry, the one that escaped was Violent Xidigarbe. Bull Demon's tone became even more ashamed. He lowered his head and looked like he was too ashamed to show his face. Hearing this, Dustless turned to look at Bull Demon. After a while, he said, "It's fine if he escaped. He probably tipped off Feathered Fox. Then what should we do next?" Bull Demon asked carefully. He was really afraid that Dustless would flip out if Violent Xidigarbe escaped. Tomorrow morning, we will immediately rush to the capital. At this moment in the capital, the flames of war were raging. The Flower Kayuan family was retreating. There was no need for Feathered Fox to do it herself. The monsters she brought were enough to easily annihilate the Flower Kayuan family. Especially after the demons in the wilderness submitted to the Feathered Fox, her strength increased by several levels. The Hua Kayuan family was no match for her at all. Their main camp was taken over by the Feathered Fox's subordinates. At this moment, in a barren mountain far away from the capital, the surviving Hua Kayuan clan was temporarily living there. Speaking of which, it was laughable that the world-famous Hua Kayuan clan had been chased out of the capital by the demons. They had no choice but to hide in the deep mountains and forests. But the current situation was like this. Feathered Fox's minions were too strong. She didn't even need to do it herself. Her minions were like fierce tigers, beating up the Flower Kayuan family. In the mountains, there were countless abandoned caves. The members of the Flower Kayuan family were hiding in them. The once prosperous Flower Kayuan family had completely fallen. There were only a few dozen of them left. The rest had all died in battle. More than half of the capital had been destroyed because of this war. It was enough to see how tragic this war was. There were countless casualties. Now the capital had become a paradise for monsters. When will that guy come to the capital? Flower Kayuan Yuluo stood outside a cave and looked at the distant sky. It was pitch black there. Raging demonic aura rushed into the sky. It was the capital. Ayaya. Little Yuluo, you seem to have a special liking for that monster. How strange. As a Onmyoji, the Flower Kayuan family has begun to rely on a monster. A strange voice came from behind. Flower Kayuan Yuluo gently turned her head. The person who entered her sight was Flower Kayuan Xiuyuan, who was wearing a white Taoist robe. He had died 400 years ago. Now that he was able to see the light of day again, he was completely relying on the army destroyer used by Flower Kayuan Yuluo. It's not that I have a special liking for that guy. I hate that hooligan very much. Flower Kayun Yulua's little mouth gently rose, then helplessly said, but, other than him, who else can we rely on? Now the capital is already in chaos. What Yulua said is correct. Although I also hate that guy, but we can only rely on that dustless. If we only rely on our Flower Kayun family, we will be done for. Long Yi, who was leaning on a rock, had a gloomy expression. If they wanted to defeat Feathered Fox, there were two important things, Army Destroyer and Amikihimaru. But Amikihimaru had already been destroyed by Dustless, so they could only rely on him. Kyoto. After the expulsion of Flower Kayun family, this place had already become a hell on earth. Humans were cruelly killed or directly eaten by demons. In a certain mansion in Kyoto, a large number of demons gathered here. This was the former headquarters of Flower Kayun family. The cadres here were all the subordinates of Feathered Fox. Bang 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 bang. Sitting at the head of the table, Feathered Fox, who had always been elegant and calm, unexpectedly smashed the jade table in front of her into pieces. Her pale cheeks were filled with hostility. Kwanggu was caught. Caw caw caw. Feathered Fox tightly clenched her little hand. It seemed as if her bones were about to burst. All the demons looked at each other in dismay. Everyone was as quiet as cicadas in winter. They didn't even dare to breathe. They knew that Feathered Fox was really enraged. They couldn't help but break out in cold sweat for Dustless. If other people died, Feathered Fox might not even look at them. But Kwanggu was different. Feathered Fox even treated him as her younger sister. Both of them had a deep sisterly relationship. If Kwanggu was caught, it would not be an exaggeration to say that he had caused a great disaster. Chapter 50. In Dustless's view, if you have to find a peerless person, there is no doubt that it is definitely Uchiha Itachi. But then again, Tsunade turned her head and looked at Dustless with curiosity in her eyes, and asked, "You and that old man reached a secret agreement. What did that old man have to impress you?" Tsunade's words immediately attracted the attention of Jiraiya and Orochimaru, and they turned their heads and looked at Dustless with great interest on their faces. "Since you know, don't ask more." Glancing at Tsunade, Dustless rolled his eyes and ruthlessly broke Tsunade's fantasy. He turned his head and looked straight ahead. "You." Hearing this, Tsunade's mouth suddenly twitched, and her eyes were burning with flames. She glanced at Dustless fiercely, and turned her head angrily. She inevitably cursed Dustless in her heart. "This has nothing to do with you," Dustless said coldly to Tsunade. Sandame's chip is naturally the Manjikyu Sharingan with Uchiha Kagami. The premise for the birth of the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan is the transplant of a relative's Manjikyu Sharingan. Although Uchiha Kagami is also an Uchiha, he has nothing to do with Dustless, and transplanting his Manjikyu Sharingan will definitely cause rejection. "Stop, something is wrong here." At this moment, Orochimaru suddenly shouted, awakening Dustless from his contemplation. Dustless suddenly froze and subconsciously looked at Orochimaru with a dignified face. The scene in front of him was quite strange. Whether it was Orochimaru, Jiraiya, or Tsunade, all three of them were cautious and vigilant, and they were looking at the surrounding environment from the corner of their eyes. Dustless was confused and didn't know what was going on. "Haven't you noticed yet? We've been surrounded," Jiraiya said with a gloomy face. His eyes were full of murderous intent. He squinted his eyes and emitted a cold light. It was extremely terrifying. The murderous intent all over his body spread out like a flood. The scene suddenly became extremely oppressive. Dustless lifted his gaze and spread it forward meticulously. He swept past all the substances in the eyeball, but his face was still filled with confusion. "Are you really a Kage-level powerhouse? Maybe your strength is like that, but how could Tsunade let go of such a good opportunity?" She was the first to attack Dustless with a face full of contempt and ridicule. Seeing that Tsunade was attacking Dustless, Orochimaru frowned and looked at her with dissatisfaction and said in a deep voice, "Now is not the time to joke around. Recently, it hasn't rained here for a long time. It's very dry." Orochimaru's eyes looked around him as he spoke in an unusually indifferent manner. Immediately, the corners of his mouth curled into a dense sneer. At a glance, the surrounding land and mountains appeared to be in a withered state. The ground was even covered with sinister cracks. In such a dry and hot environment, there was indeed a puddle of water in front of them. I'm sorry, this is my negligence." Dustless smiled awkwardly. He suddenly realized that something was wrong. He scolded himself for not being tempered enough. He wasn't as experienced as Orochimaru. After all, Dustless didn't even go to the shinobi school. Except for his strength, he didn't know anything about shinobi. Staring at the scattered water stains in front of him, Orochimaru smiled coldly. His pale face was full of murderous intent, like an Asura from hell. TSK, Orochimaru is worthy of being one of the Sannin. His insight is really extraordinary. A cold laughter suddenly sounded, accompanied by the sound of water droplets flowing. He suddenly looked up and saw that the large water stains in front of him were all flowing rapidly. In an instant, hundreds of figures appeared. The Mist Village. Looking at the group of figures in front of him, Dustless had doubts in his heart. He frowned unconsciously. If he remembered correctly, the battle with the mist was in the future. "Don't you know how to destroy the plot?" Staring at the fog that suddenly appeared inexplicably in front of him, Wu Qin was speechless. He didn't remember that the so-called plot had been shattered by him, a professional plot destroyer. "You guys. It seems like you're going to die." Orochimaru smiled cruelly as the wrinkles in the corner of his eyes kept twitching. He had already sentenced the mist to death in his heart. Orochimaru sneered again and again. The Mizukage was too naive and ignorant to think that he could defeat them with a group of weaklings. The 7 legendary swordsmen of the mist. Jiraiya was surprised as he looked at the 7 leading figures. The 7 legendary swordsmen of the mist were quite famous in the ninja world, but their old faces quickly turned cold. Aside from Dustless, the Sannin and the 7 legendary swordsmen of the mist weren't in the same dimension. The former could crush the latter, even if they had the advantage in numbers. "Scram if you don't want to die before I decide to kill you." Jiraiya stepped forward and stared at the mist ninjas. Numbers were nothing in front of absolute strength. Humph. One of the 7 legendary swordsmen of the mist also stepped forward and looked at Jiraiya with murderous intent. He looked at Jiraiya, who was much shorter than him, and sneered. "Using the blood and lives of the Sannin as stepping stones to become famous, it's best." Dustless looked at the burly man who had spoken and ignored him. However, the young man beside the Watermelon Mountain River ghost had attracted Dustless's attention. He had a shark face and a ferocious expression. He looked quite young and tall. He was much taller than the malnourished Dustless. Especially his beast-like eyes, no one dared to look down on him. Kisame. This is interesting." With a faint smile on his face, Dustless looked back and recognized the young man at a glance. He was the only one in the world who looked like a shark. "Since you want to die so much, I will reluctantly send you to heaven." With a ferocious smile, Orochimaru pounced forward. His snake eyes were full of killing intent as he rushed straight towards the pufferfish ghost. Seeing this, Jiraiya and Tsunade also rushed toward the mist village with murderous intent. Chapter 51. A hint of struggle flashed across Isuna's pretty face. Over the past few months, she felt that her soul had been corrupted by Gengo Aoi. Wait a moment. Isuna had no choice but to follow Gengo Aoi's instructions and leave. If she refused, this old man would beat her up again and humiliate her. The wise doctor in the past had gradually been driven crazy by Dustless. Sometimes, he had a bad temper and was no different from a mad dog, biting whoever he saw. "You will be obedient," Django always said with a fake smile, like a demon that could speak. The Eugen wanderer felt his hair stand on end. He felt that this old man was a monster in human skin. After a while, the unconscious man and woman were brought over by Isuna. "They don't deserve to be with me. I knocked them both out." The moment the Eugen wanderer saw the two of them, his pupils suddenly shrank and he shouted anxiously, "Father, Mother. You are despicable scum. Cut the crap." Django Aoi glanced at the Eugen wanderer coldly and urged, "Call Shifeng and ask her to kill Dustless. Otherwise, I will break your parents' legs first. You better cooperate." As soon as he finished speaking, Django Aoi ran over and kicked the Eugen wanderer's father in the stomach, causing him to wail in pain. "Don't hurt them. I agree to your conditions." Forced to make a choice, the Eugen wanderer compromised in despair. There was no other way. How could he watch his parents be killed? That was absolutely impossible. Time flew, and 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. During this period of time, everything was calm and tranquil as usual. However, Wuchen noticed that someone had changed. Shifeng, who was usually meticulous in his work, had become absent-minded. He was often absent-minded in class and looked absent-minded. In his impression, Shifeng was meticulous and serious in everything she did. On this day, Shifeng came to take care of Lucy as usual. Perhaps it was because they were the same kind, but Lucy was very close to Shifeng. After all, they were both legendary Pandora. Perhaps there was a resonance in their souls. The usually cold Lucy would occasionally laugh like a silver bell. "Teacher Dustless, I want to take Lucy out for a walk today," Shifeng said to Dustless abruptly after helping Lucy put on her clothes. "Go for a walk. Can't we do it in school?" Dustless, who was reading on the sofa, raised his eyebrows and hesitated. If a legendary Pandora went berserk, the consequences would be unimaginable. "Forget it. Go, go, go. Remember to be careful." Wuchen originally wanted to refuse, but when he saw Lucy looking at him with an expectant look, his heart softened in the end. Upon hearing Dustless's agreement, Lucy immediately revealed a bright smile that was as warm as the sun. "Speaking of which, you seem to be a little absent-minded recently. You're also in a daze during class, Shifeng." Dustless put down his book and asked Shifeng, "Is it because of that Reaper of yours?" "I've heard about him from wife Lisabeth. He hasn't returned to class yet. If there's anything I can help you with, just let me know. After all, you helped me solve Lucy's problem." As expected, I can't hide anything from Teacher Dustless. Shifeng sighed inwardly and shook her head to indicate that she wasn't. Only her expression was a little stiff. "Something happened at home. My parents' health is getting worse." Shifeng found a reason to deal with it. Django Aoki had threatened her to kill Dustless. To be honest, she couldn't do it. Shifeng thought of other strategies to solve the problem. "I'll go to your house to take a look. I have a unique understanding of medical skills." Dustless's sudden recommendation caught Shifeng off guard. She hurriedly refused, "It's just a common cold. I'll be fine after taking some medicine." "Is that so? Then send my regards to your parents. I hope they can recover soon. It's getting colder now. More and more people are catching colds." Dustless didn't talk nonsense. If he continued, it would only make things worse. However, a sharp glint flashed in his eyes. The more Shifeng said this, the more it meant that there was a big problem. After about half an hour, Shifeng and Lucy finished their meal. They changed their clothes and went out. They were beauties with good figures. Therefore, when they went out, they attracted a lot of attention. Chiffon was fine, but she was surprised when she saw Lucy. During this period, Dustless didn't stay idle. He went to the third year to find Elizabeth, but she wasn't there. He had no choice but to come to the girls' dormitory. As soon as Dustless appeared, it caused a sensation. Many girls rushed to surround him. Dustless, who was squeezed in the crowd, was even molested. In the end, he had to use invisible clone to deal with it. These years, the students are getting crazier. I thought that the seniors would be more rational. I didn't expect them to be the ones who can't control themselves. Dustless, who escaped from the disaster, hid under the shade of a tree and gasped. If he left later, his clothes would have been torn apart. Your embarrassed look is really interesting. TSK, I didn't expect you to have such a cute side. It turns out that you're not invincible. You didn't run away from a group of female students. How funny, haha. Suddenly, a figure appeared in his eyes. After seeing this person, Dustless frowned slightly. Lana Lin Chin, facing the girl's ridicule, Dustless's eyes were calm. He wasn't angry at all. Those are my students. Have you ever seen a teacher fight with her students? Besides, if they treat me like that, it means that I'm very popular. If you think that you can anger me by saying that, you're too funny, Lana. Chapter 52. The small amount of information obtained from the bundle of Shao indicated that this was an organization established during the Second World War. It didn't belong to any country, nor did it have any religious beliefs. No one even knew where it originated from. As for the organization's internal scale, purpose, and personnel, this series of secrets was even more unknown. Inside the IS Academy, Dustless sat in his office. There was a thick stack of documents on the table in front of him. This was the first batch of documents that had been delivered. The content was almost all reports on the IS industry. However, the useful information was pitifully little or none. Currently, one thing was certain. This organization was very jealous of the advanced IS and even wanted to take it for themselves. According to the news from the police, during the autopsy, the IS on Weaver Ban was gone. It was probably taken by the organization. Dustless looked up blankly and murmured, "That idiot is so naive." The white system was actually his protection. Now that the white system is in their hands, for the terrorists, Weaver Ban has no value, therefore, it was no big deal to kill him. Yuanwu, how's the preparation for the thing I asked you to do? Dustless's eyes fell on the head of the girl on the sofa. She laid there lazily. Perhaps because it was too hot, her collar was casually open, and the huge jade ball was about to jump out. However, with the terrorists bothering him, Dustless really didn't have the mood to appreciate this beautiful scene. I've prepared everything. Don't worry. Yuanwu naughtily stuck out her tongue and winked at Dustless. Then, her face showed a rare look of worry. But are you serious? Now the whole world is in an uproar. Of course. Dustless gently nodded and immediately frowned. It's just an IS competition. Is it as exaggerated as you say it is? If it was a normal IS competition, it would definitely not attract attention. However, the prize for the final winner is too rich. Not to mention others, even I am tempted. She pouted and narrowed her beautiful eyes. The winner is actually a fourth-generation machine personally built by Dr. Xiao Zhizhi. How many people are not tempted? This is only part of the reward. Dustless smiled mysteriously. He opened the drawer and placed some blueprints on the table. Take a look. Although the fourth-generation console is good, it's not as important as these things. It's just a few pieces of paper. What's so strange about it? Even more, Mingwu scoffed. However, out of curiosity, he still picked it up and took a look. Before she had time to read the content, she only saw a few eye-catching words on the design page. Her expression instantly froze, and her lips opened and closed several times. In the end, she exclaimed in shock, Hearing this, Dustless held his head with both hands and teased, "Since when did the eloquent you become a stutterer? Isn't it just the 5th generation IS design? Look at how shocked you are. Isn't it just the 5th generation design? Don't you know what this means?" Hearing this, even more panicked. This guy didn't know the hunger of a starving man. Some countries in the world were still in the 3rd generation of IS. Even countries like France were still in the 2nd generation. The 4th generation reward for this IS competition was already ridiculous enough. Now even the 5th generation design was given out. Are you saying that this is also the reward for this competition? He shook his head vigorously and forced himself to calm down. He asked suspiciously, "The reward this time is too generous. Once the news gets out, I'm afraid it will attract the attention of criminals. At that time, the losses will outweigh the gains. I want the outside world to go crazy." Dustless smiled coldly and said, "If they want to destroy people, the ancestors will go crazy. The current target of the vanquished nation machine industry is all kinds of advanced IS. If they know that I gave out the 4th generation and 5th generation IS designs as the reward, the poisonous snakes hiding in the dark will definitely jump out. In front of this huge bait, I don't believe they can turn a blind eye. For a mere bishurja, the terrorists used all their tricks. With the 4th generation and 5th generation design, the terrorists of the vanquished nation machine industry would definitely not be able to resist. Lure the snake out of its hole." Even more immediately understood Dustless's intention. Although the plan was not bad, the risk was not small. IS Academy would definitely become the target. "Don't worry, you are the president of the student council. Just do as I say." Dustless comforted him with confidence. "Let's set the time for 7 days later. No matter what, I'm still against giving out the 5th generation IS design. If it doesn't work, we can find a fake one." Even more still insisted on his opinion, if it really falls into the hands of the terrorists, it might change the world. Even more loudly, even more seriously looked at Dustless. "You don't have to worry about this," Dustless said slowly. "The 5th generation design is only a part. This was given to me by Shu. Even that guy couldn't draw out the entire design. Do you think other people can?" This, even Moore's heart skipped a beat. He thought for a bit, changed his mind, and silently nodded in agreement. Indeed, if the bundle of Shao, the pioneer of IS, couldn't design something, it was even more impossible for others to do so. Although the design in front of him was real, it was a useless piece of paper to some extent because it was impossible to create with the current technology of mankind. If it was possible, Shao would have created it a long time ago and used Dustless as a test subject. "Let's see how long you can endure." Dustless's dark eyes flashed with a mysterious light. Just as Even More said, this was inviting the wolf into the house. Chapter 53. Is that so? Your judgment is very wise. I think so too. Dustless chuckled. Just as Ox Ghost said, capturing that female fox to warm the bed was too flattering for her. Yeah. It seems that there is still one alive. Looking from afar, there was actually a figure struggling. His whole body was pierced through like a hornet's nest, and blood was constantly flowing out. The person in front, quickly report your name. A deafening sound came from afar. With this shout, everyone including Dustless was stupefied. Looking around, it was the demon leader called Hidden Master Bai. Ungrateful guy, how can he know the name of Master Dustless? Ox Ghost's eyes flashed with cold light. With a clang sound, he pulled out his katana. I will deal with that guy. Wait. Dustless's cheeks showed a faint smile. This guy is very principled. He has to wait until I report my name. I think he is quite cute. Cute? Ox Ghost was speechless. He couldn't understand Dustless's thinking at all. The other party was the cadre of Feathered Fox. He was quite powerful and commanded nearly 10,000 demons. How could this be called cute? Go and capture him alive. Dustless ordered Ox Ghost. The latter just nodded slightly. Hidden Master Bai's whole body was pierced through by the Yasukani no Magatama just now. Now he didn't have the energy to deal with Ox Ghost, so he was captured alive in just a few rounds and brought to Dustless. This guy was covered in blood, and his flesh was badly mutilated. Looking carefully, there were dozens of holes in his wounds, but even so, Hidden Master Bai still didn't retreat and was very loyal, which made Dustless look at him in a new light. You are very brave. It is Feathered Fox's blessing to have a subordinate like you. After seeing Hidden Master Bai, Dustless said slowly, don't you want to know my name? My name is Dustless. Dustless. Although he had heard of this name a long time ago, Hidden Master Bai was still shocked. He asked in surprise, you're the one who killed Devil Child Pill and captured Kwangu. Other than Lord Dustless, who else would have such courage? Ox Ghost said disdainfully. On the other hand, Dustless looked at Ghost Bull with a strange look. This kid was getting better at bootlicking. Lord Feathered Fox said that if any demons encounter Dustless, we are to pass on a message. Hidden Lord Bai looked up at Dustless and said, you better not let anything happen to Wild Bone, or he'll eat you alive. Ayaya. How scary. How can a woman like her warm my bed? I should just stomp her to death. Dustless pretended to be scared. Alright, you can go now. Dustless waved his hand. The sudden decision made Ghost Ox and Hidden Master Bai stunned. Lord Dustless, are you going to let this guy go? Ghost Ox dug his ears, thinking that he had misheard. This guy was an enemy, a loyal follower of Feathered Fox. You must be joking. Hidden Master Bai also looked at Dustless in disbelief. Don't misunderstand. I just think you're cute. Moreover, Feathered Fox will lose no matter what. You won't change anything. Dustless replied calmly, it's not that Feathered Fox is weak. Her only fatal weakness is that she chose the wrong enemy. Are you looking down on me? Hidden Master Bai looked at Dustless unhappily. His whole body was wreaking havoc. He tried to teach this guy a lesson, but a burning pain spread all over his body. The Yasukani no Magatama had already pierced through Hidden Master Bai's body. However, this kid was not destined to die yet. Some of his important organs were not damaged. So what if I look down on you? Do you think you're qualified to be compared with Lord Dustless? Ghost Ox asked coldly. This guy was too insensible. Forgive this kid and he still didn't know how to be grateful. If there's nothing else, I'll throw you down. This spaceship is too small to accommodate you. Dustless stood up and walked over slowly. I still have something to say. Hidden Master Bai quickly said, I heard that Feathered Fox captured Blossoming School's Yuluo alive. She also said that if you dare to mess around with Wild Bone, she will deal with Blossoming School's Yuluo in the same way. Hearing this, Dustless's expression was rather strange. He couldn't help but mutter, if I sleep with that kid called Wild Bone, does Feathered Fox plan to do the same? But does she have the ability to do so? Hidden Master Bai and Ghost Ox's cheeks twitched. If Dustless played like this, Feathered Fox really couldn't take revenge. I'll be back. After taking a deep look at Dustless, Hidden Master jumped down from the spaceship. Lord Dustless, what should we do next? Ghost Ox asked. He knew that Blossoming School's Ulua and Dustless's relationship was not bad. What else can we do? This time, let's be the savior and destroy the capital. Dustless looked at the dark sky in the distance. It was the direction of the capital. Demon Chi was soaring to the sky. Even the sky had turned dark. The dark clouds were oppressive, penetrating the endless despair. A team of a few hundred demons wanted to destroy Feathered Fox, who occupied the entire capital. It sounded like a fool's dream. After all, after the demons from the distant wilderness joined Feathered Fox, they occupied the entire capital. The number of demons under Feathered Fox's command reached a terrifying number of hundreds of thousands. Even at the peak of Nuliang Group, there were only tens of thousands of demons. In terms of numbers, it was 10 times more than Nuliang Group. Not to mention the battle, the most basic data was enough to make people despair. However, after witnessing Dustless's rage, Ghost Ox and the others' confidence skyrocketed. After all, he had summoned an army of 10 trillion undead. Even if he didn't reach this number, he could still completely crush Feathered Fox's underlings. Chapter 54. These guys are so strong. Who are they? Elizabeth stood up with difficulty. Her body was about to fall apart, and she did not have the energy to fight anymore. These people were too strong, and their strength was overwhelming. Her beautiful eyes stared at the people approaching her. This was the first time in her life that she tasted despair. These mysterious people of unknown origins, just one of them was already too much for her to handle. If they were to gang up on her, Elizabeth would be beaten up badly. I've never heard of them before. Elizabeth's usually wise eyes were filled with confusion. If these mysterious people were to be exposed, they would definitely rewrite the world's Pandora rankings. If it was Dustless, he would definitely be able to recognize that these people were Sakura's teammates from the Heaven Court, as well as the candidates for the Valkyrie project. Who are you guys? Wiping the blood from the corner of her mouth, Elizabeth gritted her teeth and asked, Who gave you the order to brazenly invade the Seeger Academy? You don't have the right to know. One of the Valkyrie coldly refused to answer. In short, everyone who is related to Wu Qin is our target and must be killed. Regardless of whether their relationship is good or bad, they must be executed. For example, you. If you want to hate someone, go to hell and hate that guy for offending someone he shouldn't have offended. Hearing this, Elizabeth's face turned pale. It turned out that she was not the only one who had suffered misfortune. For example, Shadalisa was probably doomed as well. These words are really scary. Anyone who is close to me, regardless of whether they are friends or enemies, must be killed. This is indeed the style of that old man Aoi Django. A lazy voice suddenly sounded, and the Valkyries frowned. Only Elizabeth felt like she had broken out of a cage. She was very familiar with this voice, and knew that it was Dustless. You're that Dustless? The Valkyrie with glasses asked, and then took the initiative to introduce herself. I'm Franca Portia, and I'm not interested in listening to your self-introduction. Dustless's face was filled with solemnity as he spat out a bone-chilling breath. Get lost before I'm really angry. Take that Heaven Court Sakura with you. Remember, get lost far away and don't appear in my sight. Teacher Dustless, these words immediately caused Elizabeth to be astonished. She found it hard to believe. In her impression, Dustless was rarely so serious, especially when he flipped out at girls. Right now, it was as if he was a different person. What did you say? The Valkyries were furious and looked at Dustless with resentment. They were used to being high and mighty. Talking to Dustless was already showing them mercy. This bastard actually told them to scram. He was simply too arrogant. Stay away, Elizabeth. Dustless stood in front of Elizabeth and said straightforwardly, there may be a lot of noise later. It won't be good if it affects you. Run for your life. I understand. Elizabeth nodded obediently and quickly stood up to leave. As she jogged away, she did not forget to turn her head to look at Dustless. He was especially scary in this state. Elizabeth even had a feeling that the usually gentle teacher was really angry now. Maybe it's because of Shadalisa. Elizabeth guessed. Previously, the Valkyries had said that anyone related to Dustless, good or bad, would be wiped out. Obviously, Shadalisa and her sister, Violet, were also the Valkyries' prey. That was why Dustless had shown such a scary expression. The few of you will die a horrible death. Dustless's eyes were bloodshot. In a hoarse voice, he said, I gave you a chance to escape, but you didn't cherish it. Then all of you will die here. Watch your tone, you bastard. One of the Valkyries angrily glared at Dustless. Her name was Kristen Evra, and she came from England. She had a bad temper to begin with, and after being repeatedly looked down upon by Dustless, she couldn't hold back her anger and swooped down. Her speed was so fast that it was fleeting. Seeing this, Dustless gently raised his right foot. Murderous aura burst out of his body, and the light on his foot gathered as he kicked out. Lightspeed kick. The speed of light was so fast that Kristen Evra did not even have time to react before she was engulfed by the destructive light. Boom! 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 Blazing flames burst out of the girl's body. Her flesh and blood were instantly burned to ashes, and she died on the spot. The flames spread, and the void boiled, burning everything around her. What a vicious move. The other Valkyries' expressions changed drastically. Realizing the danger, they hurriedly retreated. Not to mention being kicked, just the flames alone were enough to burn them to death. If they tried to get close, they would definitely meet a tragic end. The fate of Kristen Evra, who was swallowed by the fireball, was self-evident. She was afraid that not even her bones were left. She was kicked to explode by Dustless. Not even the remains of her body were left. Everything was incinerated. You bastard! Their good sister was instantly killed by Dustless, and the other Valkyries were furious. They gritted their teeth and wanted nothing more than to kill Dustless immediately. You all have this expression of hatred. It seems that you have to die. You have been brainwashed by Django Aoi too deeply. There is no saving you. When it was time to destroy flowers, Dustless would not be merciful. These people were loyal to Django Aoi, and if he let them go, they would definitely seek revenge on Shadiraza and the others. At that time, they would definitely cause a lot of trouble. It was better to eliminate them now. Heavenly Hand. The eye power of Rinnegan Sharingan was launched, and Wuchen disappeared silently, crossing layers of space, and appeared behind Valkyrie like a ghost, with a cold face. Chapter 55. What should we do? Red Rider looked at Sieg and asked, now there are only 2 of us left. Sieg's eyes reddened as he thought of the Black Rider who died tragically. The way he looked at Dustless became exceptionally hostile and bloodshot. What else can we do? Of course, we have to die together. This guy killed my best friend, and I can't forgive him. You mean Althofo, right? Dustless also understood the conflict between the two. Although that guy was indeed killed by Atlanta, I think it's still necessary to clarify some things. First of all, Dustless cleared his throat and explained, Althofo was dissatisfied with the Black Lancer's order and was tired of it. He had nothing to do with this Holy Grail war, so he deliberately died in the hands of Atlanta. Sieg's eyes flickered when he heard the words, and he looked a little surprised. He died on his own. He didn't know about this. But, no matter what, you killed him. This is a fact. Don't try to quibble, Sieg gritted his teeth and said. I don't intend to quibble with you. If you want revenge, just come. But I have to remind you that you can't do anything by yourself. You're just a clone who has been blessed by the gods. Even if you had 10 lives, you wouldn't be able to overturn the heavens, let alone someone like you. Dustless attacked harshly, and at the same time, he stared at Red Rider with glowing eyes. Don't look down on me. Sieg's handsome face suddenly twisted. He wanted to refute, but he couldn't speak. After all, Dustless was indeed too strong. Me alone. Are you blind? I still have Rid. Poochie. A bright red head rolled in front of Sieg. His pupils instantly dilated. This bloody head belonged to Ryder. At the moment of his death, his eyes were still open, full of unwillingness. He was a hero with high divinity, but how did he die unknowingly? He didn't even have the time to react. He was instantly killed by Dustless. Now, it shouldn't be a problem to say that you're alone, right? Dustless asked with a chuckle. The heaven-gathering cloud sword in his hand was still dripping with blood. One of his eyes turned into Rinnegan. Just now, he used the power of Heavenly Hand to appear behind the Red Rider and killed him. You're just a clone. You should be thanking your luck for being able to have the last laugh. Of course, it's all because of that damned protagonist aura. But, you're not satisfied with this, and actually want to challenge me. You reap what you sow, you have to bear the karma that you've buried yourself. Dustless slowly walked forward with the sky cluster cloud sword in hand. Every time he took a step forward, Sieg would become extremely nervous and involuntarily take a few steps back. I'm not afraid of you. Sieg let out a long roar, and at the same time, his body erupted with a burst of red light, and an astonishing magic power burst out from his body. There's such a magic power. Mordred was slightly shocked. He was very surprised. It was already unprecedented for a clone to have such a huge magic power like a heroic spirit. When the magic power dissipated, Sieg also underwent a tremendous change. He had already turned into the original Black Saber, Sieg Fei. Let Dustless deal with the rest. Artoria elegantly walked to Mordred's side. The latter looked at her absent-mindedly, staring at the face that was so close to him. It was so unreal, but all of this was real. Mordred's heart was filled with mixed feelings. In the past, Mordred wielded a butcher's knife against Artoria. In the end, both of them fell. Right now, Mordred's heart was filled with mixed feelings. Father. After the corner of his mouth twitched for a while, Mordred finally opened his mouth and said in a low voice, "Maybe you were right back then. I'm not suitable to be a king. At the beginning of this Holy Grail War, I met my master lion, Jie. He was very outstanding, and he taught me a lot of things. I'm very grateful to him. In this life, most people don't get what they want. I'm already very satisfied to be able to fly like a bird on the battlefield and follow my father's back closely. As for becoming a king, this road is too difficult and lonely. It's not suitable for me." Mordred seemed to be enlightened. He lowered his head and said the truest thoughts in his heart. Mordred looked at Artoria nervously and asked very anxiously, "Father, you must hate me very much, right?" It was normal for Mordred to think so. If it weren't for her, Artoria wouldn't have died, and Britain might not have been destroyed. Everything was because of her. However, what father would hate his own child? Artoria responded with a smile, and then did something that made Mordred stunned. She took a step forward and rubbed Mordred's golden hair with her little hand. As she rubbed, she muttered, "No wonder Wu Qin, that fellow, always likes to rub other people's heads. This feels really good." Mordred was stunned. Her eyes were wide open. Was this still the mature, steady, and serious King Arthur? Could it be that Dustless is trying to fool me with a fake? Mordred even had such a thought in her mind, but she quickly shook her head and denied it. Even though she was in the body of a heroic spirit, she could still feel the blood connection. The Artoria in front of her was her father. Chapter 56. If Sakura was smart, she would definitely learn her lesson after this incident. She would not dare to take revenge on Dustless in the future. It was not a bad thing to live in seclusion. If she came to challenge him again, she would be courting death. At that time, Dustless would definitely make her understand how foolish it was to live. Isn't Teacher Dustless looking for Chiffon? Elizabeth, who was being hugged by Dustless, couldn't help but ask. It was so awkward that she wanted to find a hole to hide in. She had no choice but to find a topic to divert attention. Don't worry. I left special spatial coordinates on them. As long as they meet Django Aoi, I will sense it and capture them all. A cold glint flashed in Dustless's eyes. At the end of the day, he still had to thank Django Aoi for this incident. If it weren't for him, Dustless might not have been able to find the old man even if he spent more time. It was best that Django Aoi was willing to jump out himself. At the same time, Chiffon brought Lucy to the agreed meeting place. Django Aoi's initial condition was for Chiffon to assassinate Dustless, but Chiffon wasn't willing to do so. After some bargaining, Django Aoi accepted Chifeng's condition of sending Lucy back. They even agreed on a meeting place. This was an abandoned factory far away from the city center. It was in the wilderness and no one cared about it. It was a paradise for flying insects and beasts. Where is he? Chiffon and Lucy stood together. The old man in front of them was stooped and his eyes were sunken. His skin was like the bark of an old tree, and his face was full of deep wrinkles. This person was Django Aoi. During this period of time when he was going against Dustless, he did not eat or drink well and had aged a lot. In addition, he was already old, and his body was getting weaker and weaker. He might die one day. Django Aoi stared at Chiffon with mixed emotions. Chiffon was also a legendary level Pandora, but something had gone wrong during an experiment back then, causing her to be traumatized. In the end, she could not bear the torture and ran out of Django Aoi's laboratory. When he thought about how Chiffon was now Dustless's subordinate, Django Aoi's heart ached. He had created Chiffon. What was the difference between him and her father? Tell me, why are you helping Dustless? You should know about that guy's evil deeds. Wuchen hurt Kanzuya. He is your nephew. Why are you still helping Wuchen? Aoi Django looked at Chiffon bitterly. Tears flowed down his face as he spoke. Put away your acting skills. You know that I'm different from Lucy and the others. The other legendary level Pandoras are closer to Maria in nature, and I'm 99% human. After experiencing so many things, I already have my own opinions. Do you think I'll believe your nonsense? That's right, Lucy said with a smile. She didn't know what to say, but she didn't know what to say. Upon hearing this, Django Aoi was furious. His tears stopped as he said angrily, Chiffon, no matter what, there's one thing you can't deny. I'm your creator, your father, and Kanzuya is your nephew. I'm your daughter. Chiffon seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world. He opened his eyes in an instant and stared at Aoi Django. He pointed at Lucy beside him and unceremoniously exposed Aoi Django's nonsense. Are you treating us as weapons or as daughters? Since I'm your daughter, why did some technicians in your laboratory say that I was a puppet? That included Lucy and the others. If you really treated them as your daughters, why did you seal Lucy and the others? Which father would seal his own daughter? This. Django Aoi stammered for a long time but could not explain the reason. He could not help but feel a little angry. Weren't all Pandoras with intelligence problems? Why was Shifeng so eloquent that he was speechless? Fortunately, Cassandra and Lucy are different from Shifeng. Django Ooi heaved a sigh of relief and suddenly felt lucky. If the other Pandoras were as smart as Shifeng, he might not have been able to control them. Let's end the chat here. Call Jinren out. I've brought Lucy here. From now on, we don't owe each other anything. Shifeng's tone was very cold, like a machine. If anyone who knew her saw her like this, they would definitely be shocked. Sorry, that's impossible. Stop dreaming. She's just a test subject. Since they had already shed all pretense of cordiality, Django Ooi did not hide it anymore. He immediately changed his expression. If you don't kill Dustless, I won't hand her over to you. It was because of the words a test subject that Lucy felt an inexplicable pain in her heart. She bit her lower lip with her silver teeth. Shameless guy, are you going back on your word? Shifeng revealed a rare expression of anger. She clenched her fists and a strong aura erupted from her body. Don't force me to attack. You have no chance of winning. She did not expect Django Ooi to be so shameless. When Lucy was captured by Dustless, Django Ooi was burning with anxiety. Later on, he used a series of methods to threaten Shifeng. At first, he wanted her to kill Dustless and then release the hostage, Yujin Wanderer. However, Shifeng refused. Later on, the condition changed to bringing Lucy back to Django Ooi. Now that she was here, this old man actually went back on his word. Before they met, Shifeng still had a glimmer of hope for Django Ooi. However, after seeing the nature of this old man, she completely lost all hope. So what if I go back on my word? Django Ooi sneered. His eyes flickered with a sinister light. He was cunning and cruel. Shifeng, not only can your ruler, the Yujin Wanderer, not leave. Since you're here, don't even think about leaving. Do you think I'm not prepared? You really think too kindly of me. The moment he finished speaking, two figures appeared behind Django Ooi. Chapter 57. To the current Dustless, this unprecedented stimulation surpassed everything else. Originally, he didn't have much interest in this woman, but now that Rebecca was behaving so well, his interest was completely piqued. If I had a camera right now, I really want to take a short video for Yashur Blake to see, Dustless thought in an extremely vulgar manner. After who knew how long, Rebecca grunted and some unknown liquid dripped from the corner of her mouth. She gave Dustless a few glances of reproach. Very good. From now on, you're mine. After finishing, Dustless felt refreshed. He stared at Rebecca meaningfully and said, "That brat Yashur Blake has already been blacklisted by me. If you continue to interact with him, it will only make me hate you more and more. In that case, I hope you can understand what I mean." After saying that, Dustless's face revealed a kind of haze. Not only was it a warning, but there was also a trace of killing intent. Since this kind of relationship had already happened, Dustless was naturally determined not to allow LaBelle and Yashur Blake to have any contact. I understand. Rebecca wiped the residue from the corner of her mouth and helplessly nodded in agreement. Although she was more or less unhappy, this was the nature of the world. The fate of the weak could only be decided by the strong. After waiting for Dustless to return, Veronica and Sylvia arrived. The two women's expressions were two extremes. Veronica's face was dark, and her small fists were clenched tightly. It was as if she had guessed the bad luck of a dog poop. This made Dustless completely confused. Was this woman having a stroke again? Sylvia's expression was also unprecedentedly strange. This little girl lowered her head. It would have been fine if she was just lowering her head, but the strange thing was that she would occasionally raise her head and use a shy gaze to look at Dustless. Seeing the two women's strange expressions, Dustless felt even more strange. "I say, the two of you." Dustless's voice paused slightly, and he directly said, "If you have something to say, just say it. Don't give me this. That old man just sent an order. It's about us sisters." Veronica was the first to speak. There was a trace of displeasure in her tone. She said disdainfully, "Let us two sisters marry you." Sylvia lowered her head the moment she finished speaking. "Really?" Although Dustless was a little surprised, it was only for a short moment. There was nothing strange about it. Many years ago, the king had this plan, but at that time, Dustless was not interested. First of all, the two sisters were too young at the time, especially Sylvia, who was only a little kid at the time. "Then what do you two plan to do?" Dustless drank a cup of water and asked in a gentle tone. Hearing that Wu Chen's voice suddenly softened, Veronica snorted coldly, "Don't think that by pretending to be gentle, we will marry you. It's simply a dream." King, hearing that, the veins on Dustless's forehead bulged. He almost could not help but go up and teach this disobedient girl a lesson. Didn't he always speak like this? When had he ever shouted? "Then what about you?" Dustless looked at Sylvia. The child's face instantly turned as red as a big apple. If it was in the past, Veronica would definitely have rejected him. Because at that time, she still wanted to marry Sylvia to her loyal subordinate, Gulien. "You don't want to either, right?" Dustless looked at Sylvia's embarrassed expression and asked indifferently. "No, no." Sylvia hurriedly shook her head, afraid that Dustless would be angry. She explained, "It's just that I..." Dustless was embarrassed. He had wasted half a day, and this little girl did not say anything. It was probably because she was saved by Yashur Blake when she was young, right? It was just that Sylvia did not know the truth yet. If she knew that the child who saved her was Yashur Blake, and that he was standing against her, who knew what she would think? "Since both of you are not willing, then that's fine." Dustless was not angry, and said extremely casually, "I am not interested in this either. This way, everyone will be happy, and both of us will not have any, bam." Outrageous. Before Dustless could finish speaking, the bad-tempered Veronica slammed the table angrily and glared at Dustless furiously. She questioned in an unfriendly tone, "What right do you have to refuse?" F***CK. Hearing that, Dustless was instantly dumbfounded. Mother ***, what kind of logic is this? It's fine if you refuse me, but I can't refuse you at all. This is worse than a bandit. Do you think that us two sisters are not worthy of you?" Thinking of this, a cold light condensed in Veronica's eyes, and one of her hands even reached for the large sword hanging at her waist. "Let me remind you, it's best not to use force. Have you forgotten what happened in the past?" Dustless reminded with an evil smile, "Why don't we review it again?" Humph. Veronica's body stiffened when she heard that, and the anger in her heart dissipated like a spring breeze. The thought of using force almost instantly disappeared. She had forgotten the difference in strength between them because of her anger. That's right, in front of the great demon King Dustless, the strength that she was so proud of was simply unbearable to look at. "You still look down on me." Although she had given up the idea of using force, Veronica had no intention of stopping. She said furiously, "I've changed my mind now, and I want to marry you." Veronica's words were like a super bomb. Dustless and Sylvia were blown up, and their brains couldn't wrap their heads around it for a moment. Chapter 58. Ferrito of Black was so angry that his roar shook the sky. If Keely was here at this moment, she definitely wouldn't mind tearing her into pieces and burning her bones to ashes. How did I raise such an ingrate? I should have killed her back then. Why aren't you doing it? Dustless provoked, if you don't do it, I'll cut you up and feed you to the fish. Leviathan of White's mouth twitched. He smiled but didn't say anything. If it was someone else, he would definitely snort. If it was Dustless, thinking of this, a part of his body started to hurt again. Dustless had tested a similar experience on him before. That was why Leviathan of White was so afraid of Dustless. If you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Ferrito of Black roared again and again. The moment he finished speaking, it was as if a legendary god had spoken. The void suddenly dimmed. Dustless and Leviathan of White both looked at the sky subconsciously. Both of their expressions changed. In the depths of the sky, a huge meteorite suddenly appeared and smashed toward the two of them. He can even create meteorites. Even though he knew that Ferrito of Black was abnormally powerful, Leviathan of White's eyelids still twitched when he saw the huge meteorite. Isn't this too much of a freak? Are you scared out of your wits? Seeing Leviathan of White's shocked expression, Ferrito of Black was quite proud. He boasted, in this world, the only thing that I have scruples about is the green dragon. Speaking of this, his eyes were filled with endless heroism. The green dragon was temporarily eliminated. Didn't that mean that the world was right in front of him? But, the guy who can kill the green dragon, what kind of existence is he? Since when did such a person exist in this world? Ferrito of Black thought of the powerful existence that could kill the green dragon and suddenly had scruples in his heart. Because she had just been born, she didn't have time to investigate. So it's a meteorite. It does look good. Dustless also raised his head and looked at the huge meteorite falling from the sky. He said softly, it's created using superior elements, right? This ability is so convenient. It can even create life. Not only the meteorite that covered the sky, but even Keely was created by Black Frito using superior elements. Just because it looks good. Let alone a human like you, even a dragon can easily destroy a giant meteorite like this. Black Ferrito raised his head and puffed out his chest as he spoke loudly and confidently. You can't even withstand a single blow. Hearing this, Dustless curled his lips in disdain and mocked, I don't have anything to say. You're just a frog in a well. With that, Dustless pointed at the void. Wong Su's flash. Boom boom boom. A huge beam of light shot towards the sky at an extremely fast speed. It disappeared the moment it left Dustless's hand. Rumble. Rumble. Rumble, a huge tremor came from the void, and the sky that had been darkened by the meteorites cleared up once again. Black Frito raised his head with a dumbfounded expression. The meteor that was a few kilometers in size had now turned into countless debris. Gulp. White Leviathan did not stop as he exclaimed, good, good 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 good. It would be fine if it was just a small meteorite. Looking higher up in the sky, there was a huge boundless black hole in the void. It was also created by the power of void flash. It was obvious that the power of the meteorite was only a small part of it. Impossible. After Black Frito recovered from his shock, he screamed in disbelief as he shook his head, this is definitely a trick. How can a mere human control this power that only gods can have? Trick. Pfft. Dustless could not help but laugh as he looked at Black Frito playfully, are you here to be funny? You can even say something like a trick. Why don't you do one for me now? Black Frito looked at Dustless silently as a strange light flashed in his eyes. After a while, he said, are you interested in cooperating with me? No. Dustless rejected him straightforwardly. He had heard similar words countless times. There was no such thing as cooperating when the situation was not good. Moreover, Black Frito gave Dustless a very bad impression. This kind of guy should be eliminated as soon as possible. Cooperation was complete nonsense. Don't be in a hurry to reject me. Black Frito smiled confidently and said temptingly, if you and I work together, taking down this world is a piece of cake. How about we split it in half? That's it. Dustless looked even more disdainful. At the same time, he glanced at White Leviathan. This guy's expression was a little strange. White Leviathan had made the same condition in the past. You idiot, did you lose your mind from the shock just now? How can Master Dustless agree to such a ridiculous condition? White Leviathan was the first to speak as he mocked, even if you give the whole world to Master Dustless, he will definitely not be moved. That's right. Dustless nodded. That was indeed what he meant. If he wanted to conquer the world, he would have done it long ago. There was no need to go through so much trouble to cooperate with others. It was too superfluous. Therefore, no matter what nonsense Black Frito said, it was impossible in Dustless's eyes. Because no matter what, it meant that it was impossible. It's not that easy to conquer the world. Although Green Dragon is temporarily dead, he won't die at all. There was a trace of hatred in Black Frito's eyes. He seemed to have a lot of resentment towards Green Dragon. He said, only I know where his real body is hidden. There is such a thing as a real body. A strange light flashed in Dustless's eyes. The green dragon that he killed before was just an existence that was entrenched in the body of Yuki Mobe. He didn't expect that a real body would suddenly appear. Forget it, it's all the same. Dustless didn't care anymore. After dealing with Black Frito, he used Rinnegan's dojutsu to search this guy's head. It's too simple. The power of Green Dragon is not something you can imagine. Black Frito shouted coldly because Dustless didn't take Green Dragon seriously. If I can kill him once, I can kill him a second time. What's so difficult about that? Dustless didn't take it to heart, but after he said that, the way Black Fletcher looked at him immediately changed. You mean, you killed the green dragon before? Black Frito's voice was choked. He looked quite shocked, and his eyes were wide open. In this world, besides Master Dustless, who else could it be? White Leviathan took the opportunity to flatter. As long as there was a chance, he wouldn't let it go easily. Damn it, no wonder he's so strong. Black Frito took a deep breath. He thought it was just a small fish, but he didn't expect to kick an iron plate this time. I just killed him along the way. Dustless said calmly. It was really like that. If Green Dragon didn't take the initiative to jump up, Dustless would never find trouble with Green Dragon. In the end, it was the other party who was looking for trouble. It couldn't be blamed on him. Don't tell me you're scared. Noticing that Black Frito suddenly became silent, the disdain on White Leviathan's face was even more obvious. He mocked, you idiot, where did your confidence go? This sentence suddenly poked Black Frito's sore spot. He snorted and didn't reply. Instead, he stared at Dustless faintly. It wasn't hard to see that Black Frito was completely terrified at this moment. If she knew that the culprit who killed Green Dragon was Dustless, she wouldn't dare to provoke him even if she was beaten to death because the difference in strength between them was like heaven and earth. One had to understand that Green Dragon was Black Frito's natural enemy, and Dustless killed her natural enemy. One could imagine how terrifying his strength was just by thinking about it. There was dead silence between heaven and earth. It was so quiet that it was a little depressing. Hee, you deserve it. Let's see what you're going to do. On the other side, White Leviathan raised the corner of his scary mouth, and his head revealed a gloating smile. This bastard, he used to bully me because he was strong. Now, he's stupid, right? Did he kick an iron plate? This bastard who was watching the show, he didn't even remind me. He must have done it on purpose. He wants to kill Green Dragon with a borrowed knife. Does he want to kill Green Dragon with a borrowed knife? Black Frolito was so angry that his ferocious face twitched. You're also very scheming. Dustless's gaze suddenly fell on White Leviathan, and he said directly, I've killed him. There's nothing in this world that can stop you, right? Dustless suddenly remembered the words of the Dean of the Academy. No matter what kind of dragon it was, they all had the ambition to rule the world. They all saw their own kind as a thorn in their side and a thorn in their flesh. Since Black Dragon wanted to kill White Leviathan, why would White Leviathan not want to borrow Dustless's hands to kill Black Dragon? In this way, there would be nothing that could stop him from occupying the world. I wouldn't dare, I wouldn't dare. White Leviathan was not stupid. Naturally, he could hear the implied meaning in Dustless's words. He quickly denied and admitted his mistake. If this big boss saw any clues, he would definitely kill him too. Unfortunately, there's no place in this world where you can have a foothold. Dustless looked at White Leviathan and said directly, I've already given the ruling rights of this world to Grey Dragon. You're on your own in the future. Hearing this, White Leviathan's huge body stiffened slightly, and the air froze for a moment. Grey Dragon was an independent and special existence. Although he was a dragon, he lived in the form of a human, just like how Loki did not recognize him as a dragon at all. Everything that happened before was a misunderstanding. Black Fredo said awkwardly. His dragon eyes stared at Dustless, and his tone was apologetic. He said faintly, I don't plan to be your enemy. Is that so? I'm sorry. Dustless's tone was cold, and he said impolitely, I plan to be your enemy. Previously, Keely had asked Dustless to kill Black Fredo. It would have been fine if he hadn't met him. Now that this guy was right in front of him, how could Dustless just watch Black Fredo leave? No way. If he let this guy go, it would be hard to explain to Keely. I'm giving you face, but you don't want it. You don't know what's good for you. Black Fredo's eyes were spitting fire, and her eye sockets were about to burst. She felt that she had already given enough face to Dustless. She had even addressed him as you, but this guy still wouldn't let her go. Why? Black Fredo and Dustless didn't have any grudges. At most, we'll fight to the death. Black Fredo kept roaring, and his body was emitting a biting cold aura and madness of perishing together. However, this guy still didn't dare to make a move. It could be seen that he was just talking nonsense. Are you afraid of death? Dustless sneered and said with disdain, since you're not moving, then I'm coming, whoosh whoosh whoosh. As soon as he finished speaking, Dustless turned into a beam of light and shot out. In an instant, he disappeared from Black Fredo's sight. This freak, how can a human have this kind of power? He's so fast. Black Fredo's eyes were twitching wildly, and she couldn't stop blinking. Dustless's speed was so fast that she couldn't see him clearly with her naked eyes. Idiot, I'm behind you. A teasing voice came from behind. Black Fredo's big eyes were open to the maximum extent, and they were about to fall out of his eye sockets. In front of his line of sight, a Dustless suddenly appeared. That's just a shadow clone used to confuse you. As soon as Dustless finished speaking, there were a few bang 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 sounds. In Black Fredo's eyes, Dustless turned into a piece of wood, lightspeed kick. A pure golden shining foot fell down like Mount Tai, and the position was exactly on top of Black Fredo's head. Boom! Black Fredo spat out a big mouthful of blood on the spot. Under this huge force, his body was blasted vertically into the ocean. Splash! There were huge waves on the ocean, and a large amount of seawater surged in all directions. As expected of Dustless Sama, even if the opponent is the Black Dragon, it's not at all an opponent of the same level. The students of Midgard Academy, who came by boat in the distance, were surprised. When they saw Black Fredo being kicked into the sea, they all grinned and chuckled. The most obvious one was Keely. Her eyes narrowed into two lines. Even though Black Ferrito had created her, he had abandoned her just because she failed a certain mission. He was extremely heartless. He shouldn't be so fragile. I still want to play more. That kick didn't scare me to death. As Wu Chen looked at the calm sea surface that was deathly silent, he thought to himself, he shouldn't have really died, right? His skin shouldn't be that brittle. After a few minutes, Black Fredo, who was kicked into the deep sea, still didn't move, as if he was dead. Still playing dead. Dustless released his observation hockey, and the sea area within a radius of tens of kilometers was included in his perception. Found it. His lightly closed eyes suddenly opened. Wu Chen looked into the distance with a soul-sucking light floating in his eyes. You don't know the difference between life and death. Do you feel sad that I didn't cut you into 8 pieces? Whiz whiz whiz. Without saying a word, Dustless once again turned into a light and swooped out, leaving a straight golden line in the sky. That guy seems to be crazy. White Leviathan was stunned, and his eyes followed the place where Dustless disappeared, and a small cruise ship appeared in front of him. Black Fredo knew that the gap between him and Dustless was too big, so he decisively chose other opponents. The target was the people of Midgard Academy. Compared with Dustless, this group of people was simply a soft lamb. Plop. The sea near the cruise ship exploded, and waves of tens of meters high rushed into the sky, and the sea began to shake violently. All this happened so suddenly that the moment the sea hit the cruise ship, it almost overturned it. What's the situation? These naive little girls all cried out in fear. Many of them even fell down, their noses bruised and their faces swollen. Someone attacked us, be careful. The dean showed a dignified look and ran to the deck to look at the sea under the deep sea. In a trance, he saw a fast-moving black shadow. This shameless guy, he can't beat Dustless, so he came to bully the weak. The dean clenched his fists and scolded Black Fredo for being shameless and despicable. Although he didn't see the real murderer, who else could it be except for Black Fredo? Bang bang bang. The blue sea exploded again, and the water column rushed to the sky, and a dark figure flew out with the waves. I'm shameless. Isn't that guy shameless? Isn't he bullying the weak? Black Fredo's voice was extremely hoarse, and his eyes were red, full of great resentment. Looking around, he didn't look as majestic as before. First of all, the pair of black wings had been burned to ashes by the Tensho. Secondly, he was kicked by Dustless just now. Black Fredo's head was caved in, and the footprint was particularly obvious. Even without his wings, Black Fredo used his own strength to step on the sea with his hind legs. Chapter 59. How could he resist such a powerful attack with just a finger? Are we all living in a telepathic world? The hearts of all the spectators were filled with doubts as they looked at Wu Chen's tender body. He was not tall and his body was not strong. However, under such an ordinary body, there was an absolute power hidden. Whoosh! 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 The black blade pierced through Artie's body and cut him into 8 pieces effortlessly. His limbs and the metal wings on his back were all shredded into pieces. Bang! Artie's body parts fell to the ground. His giant arm was so heavy that it created a deep hole in the ground. How did he cut through such a thick armor? Is he even human? The audience was stunned. They looked at Artie's body parts on the ground. Artie's armor was as thick as an arm, but it was still cut into pieces by the black coffin. Many people were so shocked that they started to doubt their lives. Bang! 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 Artie's body parts fell to the ground one after another. His tall and mighty figure collapsed, and there was a pile of stone-sized debris on the ground. I lost. Artie's head was not destroyed. He could still talk, but his voice was full of disappointment. It seems that I'm not strong enough. Dustless was not happy or sad, nor did he have the pride of a victor. He said coldly, "You're wrong. It's not that you're not strong enough. In fact, you're already very strong. Your only fatal mistake is that you chose the wrong opponent." Dustless said nothing. A high-density energy ball jumped out of his hand. Boom! 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 Artie's body parts were blasted into pieces. The fire burned everything, and his body was completely destroyed. "Do you want to surrender or do you want me to do it?" Dustless stared at Rimsey calmly. She didn't flinch and looked at Camilla and Inesta. As a shape-shifted being, she wouldn't be afraid and would go through fire and water with a simple command. "We've lost." Inesta lowered her head, dejected. "I admit defeat." Rimsey destroyed her school badge. "The competition is over. Contestant Dustless from Star Guide Academy and contestant Yulis won this competition." This was a very exciting competition. The commentator's excited voice echoed in everyone's ears. Although Artie had been destroyed, which was the same as being killed, no one would care about his life since he was just an impersonation. To put it bluntly, it was just a bunch of data. After the end of the competition, Dustless and Yulis had undoubtedly become stars. They were like stars surrounding the moon. Next was the last competition, and the contestant they were about to face was the strongest witch in history, Alphalia. When they returned, Dustless and the others were not happy at all even though they had won the competition. "What? Flora is missing. Who did it?" After returning to the lounge, Ulysses looked at Claudia and the others as if she had been struck by lightning. It seems that some things are unavoidable. No matter what, they will still happen. Wuchen rubbed his temples with a headache and asked, "Are there any clues?" "It's Tian Weiyao." Claudia explained, "I received a call from her earlier. She wants to fight to the death with you. If you refuse, she will kill the hostage." "What a rascal." Ulysses' beautiful eyes spewed out scorching flames. "All right. Since she took the initiative to come to me, I don't need to look for her." Dustless agreed readily. "Actually, that woman is not bad. Unfortunately, she has a brother complex. I killed Tian Weiyao, so we are destined to be enemies." Dustless sighed and said with a regretful tone. At the same time, a cold light flashed in his eyes. "Since she is an enemy, I can't do anything about it. I will be in charge of contacting her." Claudia turned and left, leaving only Dustless and Ulysses in the lounge. "Don't worry. Tian Weiyao is not the kind of terrorist who would kill innocent people. Otherwise, she would have killed Flora long ago." Dustless stroked Ulysses' pink hair that hung down to her waist. He patted the young girl's shoulder and comforted, "I can guarantee this." Frankly speaking, even if there was a problem, there was still the outer Tao, reincarnation of heaven, to revive. About 30 minutes later, Claudia returned. The time of the battle to the death was set for tonight. That woman couldn't wait to take Dustless's head. In the evening, the sky was cold. According to the appointed location, Dustless came to a deserted area. There were all kinds of damaged buildings all around. After being washed by the rain, they were full of cracks. Looking around, there wasn't a single person within a few hundred meters. She really picked a good location. "I almost got lost." Dustless stood on an abandoned building. The night was pitch black, and he couldn't see anything clearly. Buzz buzz buzz. A chill suddenly surged behind his back. Dustless immediately felt as if he had fallen into an icy hell. He turned his head slightly and saw a figure flickering in the darkness. As someone who had experienced hundreds of battles, he knew that this was the purest killing intent. "Where is Flora?" Dustless looked at the face of the black figure and asked. I released her long ago. My target is you. The young girl's voice was as cold as ice. She held a sharp katana in her hand, and her whole body was emitting a threatening aura. Is that so? Actually, you don't need to capture people to threaten me. As long as you challenge me to a battle, I will come out. Dustless's eyes instantly turned scarlet. Actually, I am the same as you. I don't intend to let you go. After saying that, Dustless released a huge amount of killing intent and pounced on Tian Weiyao like a storm. This woman had a brother complex, and it was a fact that he had killed Tian Weiyao. There was no way for the two of them to bury the hatchet. He could only ruthlessly destroy this flower. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 tips plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 60. Is it uncomfortable for me to hug you? You're running a fever. After walking for a while, Dustless could not help but ask. Shifeng's entire body was burning, and her red face made her feel like she was on fire. No, no. Shifeng shook her head repeatedly. Her heartbeat sped up when she heard Dustless's words. After thinking about it, Shifeng could only take the initiative to change the topic. Otherwise, it would be too awkward. She said, Teacher Dustless, what do you plan to do with Lucy and Wendy May? Actually, I don't have any ill intentions toward them. I don't intend to use or tame them. To be honest, they're too weak. They're not qualified to be my subordinates. Dustless's words shocked Shifeng. He actually said that the legendary level Pandora was not qualified to be his subordinate. That was too arrogant. However, judging from the strength Dustless had displayed, there was no need for him to take in his subordinates. He represented the strongest. Why would he need subordinates? Teacher, what's the meaning of holding them captive? Are you planning to hand them over to Sulier for research? Shifeng asked nervously. She had once been Aoi Django's test subject. She knew better than anyone how it felt to be used as a lab rat. It was a desperate life where one could neither live nor die. Upon hearing that, Dustless stopped in his tracks. He extended his finger and tapped Shifeng's forehead. Then, he touched his cheek and muttered to himself, Do I look like a scumbag who betrays others? I'm obviously very handsome. Ah. Shifeng felt a little embarrassed when she heard Dustless's words. She gritted her teeth and said, No matter what, Lucy and the others used to be my sisters. I hope they can live peacefully under the sun in the future. Of course, that's not a problem. Dustless agreed readily. At the same time, he revealed his ultimate goal. I do want to study legendary level Pandora, but I won't hand them over to Sulier. You should have heard of Scarlett O'Hara, right? About a few years ago, after she fell out with Aoi Django, she became one of my people. Now, she's helping me study the secrets of legendary level Pandora in Alaska. With Lucy and the others ready-made legendary level Pandora, with O'Hara's level, he might succeed in his research in the near future. Teacher Dustless, are you planning to imitate Aoki Django and use Pandora's power to strengthen yourself and rule over humans? Shifeng asked as his golden eyes stared into Dustless's eyes. People say that the eyes are the windows to the soul. Once you lie, you will appear unnatural and weak. However, after staring at Dustless for dozens of seconds, his deep black eyes were still calm and indifferent. He didn't show any signs of stage fright and just stared straight at Shifeng. Instead, she was the first to admit defeat. Being hugged by Dustless, Sivan could even feel the warm breath from Dustless's mouth on her face. As a result, her pretty face blushed once again. Ruling the world. What a boring thing to do. After a while, Dustless finally spoke as he stared at the blue sky in the distance. Actually, it might not be a good thing for a person to stand at the peak of the world. After a long time, it will be lonely. The feeling of being at the top is really boring. You don't even have an opponent. Every day feels like a year. Just thinking about it makes me bored. I understand. Sorry, I didn't understand Dustless's ambition. Shifeng lowered her head apologetically. Dustless's disdainful look was definitely not a lie. He was annoyed from the bottom of his heart. In fact, it could be described in one sentence. Being invincible was so lonely. When you stand at the peak alone and all your opponents have been trampled to death, what's the point of walking alone in the clouds? Therefore, all along, Dustless was not interested in ruling the world. It was more interesting to play in the human world. After chatting with Shifeng for a while, the two of them unknowingly walked into an underground laboratory. It was the place where Django Aoi was hiding. They also found the wanderers of Yujin who were about to starve to death. They were very miserable. There were only skin and bones left. Perhaps they would starve to death after waiting for a night. Am I one step too late? In one of Django Aoi's laboratories, Dustless stood in front of two containers. There was still liquid on the ground that had not dried up. Not long ago, the people inside suddenly woke up, broke the containers, and left. Cassandra and Tesla. Dustless muttered the names of the last two legendary Pandora. The people sleeping in these two containers were probably the two of them. He didn't encounter the two women in the previous battle. So, Wuchen thought that they were still in deep sleep. Now, it seemed that they had woken up. Moreover, they had quietly left. It was estimated that the two women had also gone to find Wuchen for revenge. Especially Cassandra. She probably hated Dustless. Kanzuya Aoi had an unusual relationship with her. That guy was crippled by Dustless and became the world's #1 eunuch. He was even sent to a mental hospital. Cassandra must hate Dustless to death. After about half an hour, Dustless, who did not find anything, chose to leave. Before he left, he did not forget to set fire to the underground laboratory. It was too cruel. There were many human experiments, and even newborn babies were used for human experiments by Django Aoi. It was said that it was for the sake of mankind. In fact, it was just to create more terrifying weapons. Therefore, when Dustless left, he directly used Great Fire Annihilation to burn everything. It could be considered to have ended Django Aoi's evil life. Are Cassandra and Tesla okay? Shifeng looked at Dustless worriedly. His face was haggard and weak. Wendy May and Lucy's soul reserves were at the level of 100,000, while Cassandra and Tesla's soul reserves were at the level of 1,000,000. It was self-evident what this meant. The difference was obvious. Chapter 61. Black Setsu looked at Madara with a determined face. He hoped that Madara would change his mind and give up Dustless Uchiha. After all, it's about the plan to resurrect Kaguya. Thousands of years of planning, Black Setsu didn't dare to be careless. As the saying goes, a single mistake can lead to the failure of the entire plan. Even the most careful loophole can lead to the failure of the entire plan, not to mention the replacement of Uchiha Obito with Uchiha Wuchen. The impact is even more fatal. After waiting for thousands of years, the plan will succeed. How can Black Setsu let Dustless, such a little devil, mess up his plan? Madara-sama, that kid's pursuit of power has reached the point of madness. Once he gathers the 9-tailed beasts, Black Setsu was silent and just looked at Madara. It's impossible for Madara not to understand such a simple meaning. Manjiku's Sharingan is not an ordinary Tomo Sharingan. To a certain extent, it can see the content of the steel of the Uchiha family's Naka shrine. It's inevitable that Dustless will do something crazy. Hearing this, Madara's brows couldn't help but frown. His eyes flashed with hesitation, and he began to hesitate. He's just cultivating a pawn to resurrect himself, not cultivating an enemy who will compete with him for the jubi. According to what Black Setsu said, it's not very likely that Dustless will definitely have the idea of the jubi, and as Black Setsu said, Manjikyu Sharingan can already see the content of the Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. If Dustless obtains the Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, he can see the content of the Rinnegan. That guy has no direct descendants for the time being. His parents are ordinary 3 Tomo Sharingan, and according to the number of times he uses his eyes are not far from self-sealing. White Zetsu said, according to the form of the Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, at least in the future, Dustless can't open the Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, let alone the legendary Rinnegan. Humph, that little devil will never be able to open his Rinnegan. Black Setsu sneered again and again in his heart. The conditions for opening the Rinnegan were extremely harsh. One must be Indra's reincarnator. This alone closed the door to all the Uchiha clansmen, and it also required the body cells of Azura's reincarnation to be fused. And it's not certain when he will be able to awaken the Rinnegan, because Madara is close to dying of old age. Is that so? In other words, Uchiha Dustless is almost blind, and there is no suitable Sharingan to transplant. Uchiha Madara's sunken eyes suddenly swelled, and he looked particularly scary. It's better to bring in Uchiha Obito and Uchiha Dustless, let them work together and monitor each other. White Zetsu looked at Madara's gloomy face and carefully suggested. Let me go. It's good to notice this. Hearing this, Black Zetsu was furious, and his anger burned all his reason. When he was about to scold White Zetsu, Madara agreed with White Zetsu's proposal and felt that the plan was feasible. Madara-sama, this is not good, is it? Black Setsu's mouth twitched, and he suppressed the anger in his heart. He said to Madara, if you change the plan like this, unexpected things may happen, and it is not impossible for the entire Eye of the Moon plan to collapse. Black Setsu looked at Madara seriously, and his tone was filled with endless sadness. Don't worry. Madara looked at Black Setsu in surprise, and doubts emerged in his heart. Usually, Black Setsu was obedient to his orders. Today, he always blocked Dustless intentionally or unintentionally. However, although he was confused, Madara didn't think much about it, because he always regarded Black Setsu as the incarnation of his will, and he never suspected that Black Setsu had other motives. The so-called plan is the prototype of my resurrection. There is a saying that the world is changeable, and the plan can't keep up with the changes. There is no such thing as an airtight plan designed by human beings. Any plan would have a loophole that no one knew about. Moreover, no matter who set it up, there would always be loopholes. This was something that Madara could accept. He was a human, not a god. It was impossible for him to take care of everything. Uchiha Dustless and Uchiha Obito are the ones who perfect the loopholes in his plan. The reason why he chose Dustless and Obito is that they can restrain each other. Even if Dustless really wants to attack the Bijou, Obito will not easily leave it to him. Uchiha Dustless. Just a little bit of gravel, it's hard to compare with me. Madara's dry mouth raised a domineering smile, and his face was full of contempt and disdain. For him who had opened the Rinnegan, not to mention Uchiha Wuchin, who was only a half-baked Mangekyo Sharingan, he hadn't even opened the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, and even Hashirama wasn't his opponent. After all, the Rinnegan is above the Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. It can create and destroy the world. It is the power of the 6 paths, and its power is much more powerful than the Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. Black Setsu opened his mouth, but he chose to be silent. He was depressed. Dustless was not in his script, and now his plan several years ago is bound to change. He was sure that Obito would not be out of his control. After all, he has been secretly watching Obito for many years, and he knows where his weakness is. As long as he follows the vine to the melon, he can successfully make Obito fall into the darkness. But Dustless is fundamentally different. According to the current evidence, Uchiha Dushless is a self-centered person, and he will not be shaken by anything. Even if his parents are killed in front of him, for Uchiha Dushless, he will not be shaken. It seems that I can only let nature take its course, he sighed silently. Although Black Setsu is the kind of person who doesn't believe in fate, but in the current situation, he can only watch Madara's practice. As the incarnation of Madara's will, it is impossible for him to disobey Madara. Black Setsu said that Wu Qin was really a headache. However, Madara had already nodded to pull Wu Qin into the team, and he was determined. What he had to do was to do everything possible to bring Wu Qin in. This made Black Setsu more uncomfortable than eating 10 pounds of flies. His stomach was churning, and he almost vomited. It was particularly uncomfortable. Chapter 62. Time flew by like a white steed. Unknowingly, a week had passed. Although it was only a week, a lot of things happened. The most sensational thing that happened during this period was the death of the Cloud's Raikage by tens of thousands of Rock's ninjas. The death of a village's Kage caused an unprecedented sensation. It was like a rock falling into the calm water, suddenly causing a huge wave. The third Tsuchikage son, Kitsuchi, led tens of thousands of Rock's ninjas to kill the Raikage. This news raged around the world like a hurricane, making the Third Shinobi World War even more suspenseful, so all the shinobi villages were waiting for the Cloud's next move. The daimyo of the Land of Thunder also declared war on the Land of Earth and vowed to make the Rock Hidden Village pay the price. However, the Cloud Hidden Village's ninjas were still hiding in the village and completely ignored the daimyo's orders. The war against the Earth Country was inevitable, but the premise was that the new Raikage must be chosen, so in a short time, the Cloud had no military force to attack the Rock Village. Konoha was defeated by the Earth Country, and then the third Raikage was killed by the Rock Village. For a while, the entire shinobi world was in awe of the Rock Village. Some of the smaller countries that were hesitant to join the Rock Village, which made Inoki's life extremely good these days. But that wasn't the case. In the tent, the atmosphere was oppressive and heavy. Inoki was looking at the information in his hand gloomily, and his old face changed dramatically. He was panting, and his face was extremely gloomy, and he was about to go berserk. Tsuchikage-sama, you... The Gobi's Jinchuriki carefully looked at Inoki's face and couldn't help but feel numb. Looking at Inoki's angry face, he knew that the information in his hand must be about the defeat of the Rock Hidden Village, or the defeat treaty that the Cloud Hidden Village ordered the Rock Hidden Village to sign. Otherwise, Inoki wouldn't be so angry. This old man cherished his life very much, otherwise, he wouldn't be alive now. That damn muscular man is really not an ordinary person. Chakra surged, and the information in his hand was shattered into pieces. The muscular man he was talking about was naturally the Cloud's Raikage. Facing the attack of tens of thousands of Rock's ninjas, he could last for 3 days and 3 nights. Speaking of this, Inoki took a deep breath. Although the Raikage wasn't that old, he was in his 40s or 50s. What made Inoki speechless the most was that the old guy was not killed, but died of exhaustion. In other words, if he still had physical strength and chakra, he would have been able to fight without any restrictions. Look! Inoki scolded, and his expression became gloomier. It's good to kill the Raikage, but the loss of the Rock Village was also terrible. More than 2,000 ninjas were killed. Fortunately, the Raikage is dead. Suppressing the anger in his heart, Inoki also calmed down, and then began to smile again. Looking at the map on the table, the small earth-colored flag almost occupied the entire map. Staring at the small red flag that had been swallowed up in front of him, Inoki's mouth raised into a sneer. That was Konoha's ninjas. We must quickly deal with Konoha. Soon, the Cloud's ninjas will attack us. Frowning, Inoki said worriedly, and a hint of viciousness flashed in his eyes. He naturally understood the simple truth that a great man must be ruthless, and a small man must not be a gentleman. If they don't clean up Konoha's ninjas in time, facing the cloud's attack, the rock's ninjas might really be destroyed. But after the Sannin came 3 days ago, they have stabilized the situation. We have no advantage at all. The Yambi's Jinchuriki looked at Inoki coldly, and his words were full of sarcasm and dissatisfaction. Everyone knew that he had a bad relationship with Inoki. Old Rashi looked at him coldly. He was against attacking the Reikage from the beginning, because it was useless to be arrogant, and it would bring disaster to the village. Especially since the Cloud Village also has 2 Jinchuriki, and the whole country is full of fighting faction. It's useless for you to say this now. Inoki also stared at Old Purple coldly, with a fierce look on his face, and then rolled his eyes, showing a look of a dead pig not afraid of boiling water. Obviously, he was saying that he was the Tsuchikage. If you don't agree, then bite me. You. Seeing Inoki's attitude, Old Purple was furious. His breath was filled with sparks. It was obvious that he was on the verge of turning black. Don't be angry, don't forget that Konoha is still watching us. The Gobi's Jinchuriki smiled bitterly. The relationship between Inoki and Old Rashi was like this. Both of them didn't like each other. Perhaps if he wasn't there, they would have already fought. Old Purple was a straightforward person, and he could not tolerate sand in his eyes. Inoki, on the other hand, liked to play tricks. Naturally, the two of them had different opinions and views. We must get rid of Konoha's ninjas. Old Rashi's eyes were cold, and he was murderous. This was a must. Even if the Sannin and Dustless arrived, Konoha's ninjas wouldn't be able to survive. Although Inoki was as stubborn as Old Rashi, they had the same idea. They must quickly get rid of Konoha, and then return to the rock to prevent the cloud's revenge. Chapter 63. Leaving behind these cold words, he did not even look at Leech's corpse in the imperial courtyard. He turned around and left resolutely. Trying to run. Actually, I can't wait for you to run. After all, I left that thing on your body. Wuchen revealed a meaningful smile. After discovering that Imperial Courtyard's heart knot had run away, he was not as upset as he had imagined. Instead, there was a faint smile on his lips, giving people the impression that he had done it on purpose. Dustless didn't stay for long and quickly left as well. There wasn't much value in staying here any longer. In fact, Dustless didn't plan to kill Imperial Knot from the very beginning. After all, it was pointless for her to die here alone, and the Imperial Knot residence wouldn't be destroyed. Therefore, it was better to wait for this woman to return and gather the experts of the Imperial Knot residence. Then, he would appear and destroy the entire Imperial Knot residence in one fell swoop. When Imperial Knot fled, Dustless had already left the spatial coordinates of the Flying Thunder God on his body. There was no need to worry at all. Dustless had finally returned to Nuliang Group's spaceship. Everyone's hearts were finally at ease. This was because Dustless was their hope. Without Dustless, no one would be able to survive in the capital where demons resided. Lord Dustless, after you left, many demons attacked us. Everyone worked together and successfully repelled the enemies. The leader was that guy named Aoxitigarba, Snow Lady reported to Dustless. At a glance, the entire spaceship was filled with wounded bandaged people. Everyone had fought with their lives on the line. That big-eyed monster sure knows how to pick the right time to use this kind of trick when I'm not around. Dustless clenched his fists, then relaxed them. There was no need to mind because all of this would end soon. The feathered fox was about to give birth, and after that Hui was born, everything in this world would come to an end. Boom boom boom, there was a violent explosion in the distance. Boundless black fog gathered in the sky from all directions, as if the world had reached its end. Darkness covered the sky, and it was a scene of doomsday. At this moment, all the demons in the capital looked up at the sky. The surging darkness spread out like dark clouds, covering the entire capital. Moreover, it continued to spread endlessly, as if there was no end to it. Looking at the horizon, everyone felt a chill and pressure. It was as if a demon from hell had awakened. The evil aura was chilling. Did you all feel it? Dustless looked at the dark horizon and guessed something. Soon after, he swept his gaze towards Snow Lady and the others. He could ignore the uncomfortable chill, but Snow Lady and the others couldn't. He could clearly see the cold sweat on their temples, and even their hairs on their bodies. Some demons with weak willpower even knelt on the ground and looked at the sky with reverence. At the same time, all the demons who had heard of Huey's legend raised their arms and cheered. Their earth-shattering cheers resounded through the entire capital. Hormau's face was tense. She was also sweating profusely. She looked at the surging darkness in the horizon as if she was facing a great enemy. Her face was pale as she murmured, "Could it be that the demon called Hui has been revived?" Yes, not only Hui, but his mother, the feathered fox. But this kid is really strange. He was actually born in such a way. Dustless's clear gaze pierced through the endless darkness until it reached the vast starry sky. At the highest point in the sky, he saw a massive black sphere. The feathered fox was standing on that sphere. Buzz 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 buzz, after a long while, the darkness in the sky dissipated. A dazzling golden light descended from the depths of the clouds. Bathed in this light, the feathered fox seemed extremely divine. "Welcome everyone who has come from afar to witness the night of Qingming's birth with me, the feathered fox." The feathered fox's gentle voice traveled down from the sky, spreading to every corner of the capital. Perhaps it was because she had just given birth, but her gentle voice was pleasant and filled with motherly love. "Is she treating us like guests? This female fox really knows how to put on airs. I hope she can still be so calm when the battle starts." Dustless curled his lips. He turned his head and said to Snow Lady, Hormao, and the others, "Go back and prepare." "Prepare for what?" Snow Lady and Hormao looked at each other. They didn't know what Dustless was talking about. "Your reactions are so slow. Do I need to remind you?" "Of course it's the party after defeating the feathered fox and Hui," Dustless lectured them. "It's too tiring to have servants like you." Hearing this, Snow Lady and Hormao rolled their eyes at Dustless. However, they couldn't hide the joy on their faces. Dustless's confidence was like a shot in the arm. Their restless hearts also calmed down. The evil aura that Hui emitted was too terrifying. It was almost suffocating. Even their souls trembled. None of them had the confidence to face it. They didn't even need Hui. Just his mother, the feathered fox, was enough to sweep through all enemies. Thus, they could only rely on Dustless. The calmer he was, the calmer Hormao and the others felt. They had completely become an existence of faith. Ha 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 ha. Long live Lady Feathered Fox. Long live Lady Feathered Fox, a very excited voice came from the other side. Dustless glanced over and saw that on the attic a few hundred meters away, like Sitagarbo was waving his arms excitedly. His whole face was red. He can hear it so clearly from so far away. Just how loud is this old man's voice? Dustless muttered. He then raised his right hand. A high-density energy ball instantly formed at the tip of his thumb. Chapter 64. Caw caw caw. A large number of cracks appeared in the container containing Shadiraza. An unknown mysterious liquid flowed out and covered the floor. Dustless could even hear her heartbeat through his observation hockey. She's about to wake up. Seeing this, Scarlett O'Hara was extremely excited. Her face and neck were red. She wanted to prove to Dustless that she was more outstanding than Aoi Django, more outstanding than him. Bang! A few seconds later, the container exploded. Glass shards splattered all over the floor. The clean laboratory was also a mess. However, Dustless and O'Hara were concerned about Shadirosa. Everything else was just a small problem. She won't be like the other legendary Pandora, right? For example, her IQ will be lowered. Dustless could not help but ask worriedly. If that was the case, what was the point of becoming a legendary Pandora? Absolutely not. With a straight face, Scarlett O'Hara patted her chest solemnly and promised, "I can guarantee this with my life." "Is that so?" "That's for the best." Dustless shut his mouth in satisfaction. When he looked at Shadirosa again, she had already opened her eyes. Cough, 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 Dustless coughed awkwardly. He had just climbed out of the container. At this moment, Shadirosa was still naked. He could only put his clothes on Shadirosa's body to avoid exposing certain important parts. Dustless. Shadirosa's eyes were hesitant as she called out Dustless's name in a daze. She rubbed her head. "How long have I been asleep? My head is dizzy and I feel like my body is about to rust." "It's been a few months. Your transformation is complete and you just woke up," Dustless answered truthfully. Then, he asked expectantly, "Can you move? Try attacking me." Scarlett O'Hara also looked at Shadirosa with a hopeful expression. She wanted to prove to everyone that the legendary Pandora she had developed was better. Otherwise, she would be letting down Dustless's cells. "Okay." Shadirosa's cute dimples appeared on her cheeks as she said to Dustless, "You have to be more serious." Hearing this, Dustless chuckled. "The cells in your body are not only Maria's, but also mine. Do you think I will lose to my own ability? Then you're in for a big surprise." Suddenly, her body flickered and she disappeared without a trace. Dustless could not help but be astonished when he saw this. Of course, he was not astonished by Shadirosa's speed. Rather, this ability made him think of a profound movement technique that could never appear on a human's head. This shouldn't be possible, right? Dustless immediately shook his head in denial. If that was really the case, it would be too inconceivable. Bang! Suddenly appearing behind Dustless, Shadalisa threw a punch at him. Dustless did not put up any defenses. Her strength was so great that it shattered his body, and the wind from her punch raised the laboratory to the ground. D***, my laboratory. But speaking of which, is there a mistake? How can a casual attack be so powerful? Scarlett O'Hara wailed in shock. Her laboratory was made of special metal. When the legendary Pandora Lucy had once been here to investigate, she had refused to cooperate and tried to escape. However, she had not been able to destroy the laboratory with a single punch. Now, Shadirosa had destroyed it so easily. Was this strength heaven-defying? What the hell? Compared to Scarlett O'Hara, Dustless was even more shocked. He carefully sensed the residual energy fluctuations on Shadirosa's body and could not help but say in disbelief, "There's no way I'm wrong. That power just now was definitely spiritual pressure. And that movement technique was undoubtedly the Grim Reaper's teleportation steps." At this point, Dustless felt that his brain was not enough. This fellow had only transplanted his cells. Not only had she obtained spiritual pressure, but she had even learned teleportation steps. How could he not be shocked? Although the spiritual pressure contained in Shadirosa's body was negligible and was not worth mentioning compared to Dustless's, it was more than enough to instantly kill the so-called legendary Pandora. I don't know either. After I woke up, I inexplicably learned this power. Shadirosa tilted her head. She had been in a deep sleep for the past few months. After she woke up, she suddenly controlled this ability. She should have inherited it from Lord Dustless. Scarlett O'Hara rubbed her chin and said. Although it was far-fetched, this was the only possibility. After all, the cells in Shadirosa's body had come from Dustless. Perhaps. Dustless nodded gently. In fact, there were many similar examples. For example, Shimura Danzo in Naruto had transplanted Hashirama's cells and learned to use Mokuton. Although he was only a dabbler, he did know some Mokuton. Shadiraza was in a similar situation. After transplanting Dustless's cells, she had obtained the spiritual pressure belonging to the Grim Reaper, but the amount was very small. By the way, do you have any other abilities? Dustless blinked and said, for example, this thing. After saying that, Dustless revealed the Uchiha clan's exclusive Sharingan, which shone with a demonic light. Anyone who was stared at by it would feel despair as if they had fallen into hell. No. Shadiraza looked at the blood-red gem-like eyes. She had not awakened this ability. That's strange. I can understand you obtaining the Sharingan, but I'm a little confused about the spiritual pressure. Dustless was puzzled, but he could not figure out the reason. He could only sigh inwardly that human genetics were too mysterious. Dustless-sama, since Miss Shadiraza has succeeded, do you still want to continue transforming others? Scarlett O'Hara's tone was respectful. Dustless's status in her eyes was as high as a god. Let me think about it. This is troublesome. Dustless was a little troubled. If he continued to implant his cells in others, would other abilities appear? For example, the Uchiha clan's Sharingan, or even Kekii Genkai like Mokuton. Chapter 65. Have mercy, let's talk things over. The green dragon struggled and begged for mercy. It was all my fault before, let me go. From now on, I will never appear in your... Ah! The green dragon suddenly screamed again. His spirit power was strong enough, but that was in the past. Now, he had suffered a devastating blow. Moreover, Dustless's spirit power was boundless, like a vast ocean, unstoppable. The green dragon realized that he could not hold on any longer and kept vomiting blood. If you knew this would happen, why did you do it in the past? There's no medicine for regret in this world. Dustless looked indifferent as his majestic spirit power continued to invade the green dragon's body. Previously, the green dragon could control his body skillfully. Now, he was suppressed by Dustless in a corner and could not move. Moreover, the range was shrinking rapidly. I'll fight it out with you. The green dragon gritted his teeth, and his tone was filled with madness. Using the last of his spirit power, he responded to Dustless's attack and chose to go all out. However, this would only cause him to die faster. I'm the Ten Tails, and I've been polished by countless worlds. I don't even know how strong my spirit power is, and you want to fight me? Dustless grinned and sneered, looking extremely confident. Looking at it carefully, most of the charred wood had turned emerald, glowing with strong vitality. Only the bottom was still a little black. This was the position that the green dragon currently occupied. There was only a little bit of it left, and it was already a candle in the wind. What could he use to fight Dustless? Therefore, no matter how much he resisted, he could not change anything in the end. It's finally over. After about 10 seconds, Dustless breathed a sigh of relief. Looking around, the charred branch had turned completely green, and other branches and leaves had grown out, growing healthily. However, it was no longer the green dragon who was controlling it, but Dustless. He had become a new center. The green dragon's authority is not bad. Dustless closed his eyes, and his body and mind were completely immersed in the body of the small branch. Caw, roots grew from the roots of the branches at a speed visible to the naked eye, firmly burrowing into the depths of the soil. Dustless followed suit and began to devour the nutrients of all the plants around him like the green dragon. Let's go somewhere else. The plants here have all been burned or swallowed by the green dragon. Dustless opened his eyes. The battle between the two had already damaged the land. Wait, Dustless's gaze suddenly froze. He suddenly felt a small portion of energy enter his body. His gaze swept towards the small branch, and his pupils violently contracted. The small branch didn't change much. It was still rooted there, but the ground around it was very different. The soil had already turned into sand. Interesting. It seems that my authority has been elevated after I obtained the identity of a green dragon. Dustless's voice carried a rare hint of joy. He seemed to be quite concerned. Green dragons could only target plants. After Dustless became a third-generation green dragon, not only could he target plants, but he could also devour land, other energies, and even life forms. This was a completely different divine tree. Of course, to Dustless, these were not important. The road ahead won't be smooth sailing. To a certain extent, this is considered a second life. Dustless looked at the small branch and pondered. Even though he was destined to be immortal as the ten-tailed beast, everything was uncertain. If he encountered an unprecedented enemy and was killed by some heaven-defying method, the small branch on this planet would live on as the second Dustless. By a stroke of luck, I managed to get a pretty good trump card. Dustless stretched. His body slowly floated up. Looking at the distant horizon, he turned into a ray of light and disappeared. As for the small branch, it changed its location and hid in a secret place deep in the mountains. As Dustless's second clone, this body didn't need to be very powerful. It only needed to survive intact. Are we almost there? A ray of golden light swept across the sky. Dustless stared at the island in the distance and sped up. In this world, most of the dragons had been wiped out by Dustless. Although there were still a few dragons hidden, he had already ordered the Dean to recruit them. If he refused, then sorry, he would end up like the other dragons. Currently, there was still the White Leviathan and the so-called Golden Dragon Wind-Breaking Vulture. At the same time, Dustless also descended on Midgard Island. But, something's not right. What's going on? Looking at the ruins in front of him, Dustless was stunned for a moment. After a series of crises were resolved, Midgard Academy had been rebuilt. But, where did the ruins in front of him come from? There was obviously an intense battle. Dustless suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. Lord Dustless. A familiar voice suddenly sounded. Dustless looked up and saw a young girl running from afar. It was Elise, whose face was covered in dirt. Moreover, there were many wounds on this child's body. It seemed that she had been in a fierce battle before. Where are the others? Dustless asked with a dark face. He had a bad feeling. The Leviathan of White ambushed us, and many people were captured by him. Elise explained with a sad face, originally, we tried to rope in the gold dragon according to Lord Dustless's orders, but that guy rejected us. Naturally, a fierce battle broke out between us. So, we decided to work together. With the help of the White Leviathan, we successfully killed that guy, but in the end, for some unknown reason, the White Leviathan betrayed us and ambushed the Dean and the others. Many of the others were captured by him. That bastard must be tired of living. Dustless's murderous intent was awe-inspiring. Traces of shocking cold air overflowed from his body. Although he had nothing to do with the White Leviathan, he felt betrayed at this moment. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 66. This is your choice. Since that's the case, I won't bother you if I'm bored in the future. Since they wanted to explore the mysterious starry sky, Dustless didn't stop them. After all, this was their choice. About 10 days later, Dustless and the others disappeared from this world, becoming the biggest mystery of the century. After all, an unprecedented figure like Dustless and the leader of Bridget's family had disappeared from this world. The impact was definitely huge. It was fine if Dustless disappeared alone, but the disappearance of Violet was definitely unprecedented. After all, Bridget's family was the top family that controlled the world. The sudden disappearance of the family leader caused the world to stop spinning. This matter was also studied by some board scholars and professors, and they came up with a series of conclusions. The entire human race believed that Dustless had left this world and gone to search for the outer space. After all, Dustless had reached an unimaginable level of advancement. It was absolutely impossible for humans to kill him with their strength. Therefore, some countries embarked on the path of exploring the universe. Humans also headed toward the solar system. The cells left behind by Dustless also played a huge role. Scarlett O'Hara implanted Dustless's cells into a group of humans. Some of them, like Shadalisa, were born with incredible abilities. When encountering the so-called aliens, humans had to retaliate. In order to commemorate Dustless, statues rose from the ground of human civilization. End of chapter. After leaving the world of the Zero-Degree Warrior, Dustless wasn't in a hurry to transmigrate. He stayed in the system world for a few years. After all, he had a wife and children. It wasn't just one or two, but a large group of them. For 1,000 years, Dustless didn't spend time with them. Therefore, he spent a few years staying in the system. Although it was a little boring, it was also quite enjoyable. A normal person's life was to get married, have children, raise the next generation, and enjoy the blessings of the world. In fact, Dustless's life was more or less the same. The only difference was that he would occasionally travel to other worlds. It was a night filled with wind and snow. The cold wind howled as the blizzard mercilessly ravaged the earth. What kind of place is this? Are you kidding me? It's been snowing for an entire day and there are no signs of it stopping. In the wilderness, a skinny figure mumbled to himself. This person was shrouded in a mysterious power. Even the snowstorm would take the initiative to avoid him, as if it was afraid of this short-haired man. Without a doubt, this person was Dustless. Even he himself did not know what kind of world he had come to. Let's find a place to hide from the wind and snow. With his eyes closed, his observation hockey spread out and he didn't expect there to be humans in the wilderness, but he soon detected a human being, and it was a young child. Plop. The little girl walked alone in the snowstorm. Her ruby eyes were filled with uncertainty and confusion. Her clothes were tattered and her feet were exposed. However, the little girl was like a walking corpse. She didn't feel cold at all. Hey! Kid! Suddenly, in front of the little girl, a big man appeared. This person was dressed so tightly that his face could not be seen clearly. Only a pair of eyes were jumping with a strange red light. Who are you? The little girl asked doubtfully, looking at the person in front of her. It doesn't matter who I am. What matters is, the mysterious figure revealed an evil smile and suddenly opened his mouth, revealing two sharp fangs. I'm hungry. Can you offer your blood to me? After that, the man took off his hat, revealing a distorted and ferocious face. His eyes were also protruding outwards. It felt like they were about to fall off. It was extremely scary. Ah! Don't come over. The little girl was also shocked and panicked. She turned around and ran, but because the snow was too thick, she fell into the snow with a plop. She stared at the strong man who was closing in on her, her eyes full of fear and despair. Hee hee. Kid, your eyes are really interesting. I like the look of despair in humans. Also, your blood must taste good, right? The big man laughed evilly. He even stuck out his tongue. Obviously, this guy was not a normal human. You even attacked a child. Your interests are really unflattering. A cold voice suddenly came. The big man and the little girl were stunned. They looked in the direction of the voice. Dustless walked over slowly with a calm face. The wind and snow took the initiative to avoid him. He put his hands in his pockets and took the initiative to greet them. He was very leisurely, giving people the illusion that he was taking a stroll after dinner. Yo, Dustless walked to the little girl's side and took the initiative to greet her. I beg you, please save me. The frightened little girl subconsciously threw herself into Dustless's arms. Her eyes were filled with tears. Her cold little hands hugged his neck tightly. This was her only life-saving straw. Meddling in other people's business. Let's die together. The big man roared and pounced over in anger. Tens ho. Dustless blinked his eyes gently. Black flames suddenly fell on the man's body and evaporated him instantly. Even his corpse did not fall. The bad guy is gone. What's your name? Dustless rubbed the little girl's head. It was too boring in the mountains. There was no one to talk to. Then, he asked in boredom, also, you don't look like a normal human. Dustless lowered his head and pondered. The little girl in front of him looked like a person. Their experiences were almost the same. Julan Yuji. Chapter 67. These monsters are so childish. Listening to the cheers of the monsters, Dustless could not bring himself to hate them. Instead, he pitied these pitiful people. Once the golden magic formation surrounding Dustless exploded at the same time, it would destroy the entire sky of the capital, as Dusk had said. The monsters watching the battle below would not be spared either. However, these fools were still cheering for Dusk excitedly. Was there something wrong with their heads? Dustless could not bring himself to hate these pitiful creatures, so he simply chose to watch from the sidelines. From the very beginning, Dusk had planned to purify the world of monsters. Although he was a monster, he was also a Onmyoji. It could be said that he was on both sides. Harry Hoare and Snow Lady, did the two of you hear me? The two women were stunned. They looked at each other and immediately answered respectfully, Lord Dustless. It's good that you heard me. I'm communicating with the two of you using my mind. Hurry up and get everyone to leave in the spaceship. Dustless's voice entered their minds again. This mad dog has been driven mad. He wants to destroy the entire capital. Fortunately, all the humans in the capital had run away. The remaining ones were mostly monsters, and they were all hardcore followers of the Feathered Fox. If Xiao was willing to help eliminate them, Wuchen wouldn't stop him. In the end, he didn't have to do it himself. Not long after, Nuliang Creation's spaceship moved at full speed and retreated from the capital. Run. Do you think you can run? Dusk naturally sensed the escaping spaceship of Nuliang Creations, but he did not care. As long as Dustless died here, those people would also die. Buzz buzz buzz, thousands of magic formations approached Dustless at the same time. He seemed to have accepted his fate. He stood motionless in the sky and allowed the magic formations to approach him. In the eyes of the other monsters, this scene was seen as Dustless voluntarily giving up after realizing the strength of the enemy. The monsters on the ground cheered even more excitedly. Explode! At Dusk's command, the shining magic formations in the void all exploded. Boom boom boom. Boom boom boom. Boom boom boom, the void around Dustless exploded. After the magic arrays overlapped, they released a powerful force that tore the sky apart. A boundless sea of fire burned fiercely, and the sky above the entire capital burned. The oxygen in the atmosphere rapidly evaporated. If one breathed air into their lungs, their nostrils would form bubbles. This move of Dusk's was simply too frightening. Even the sky was boiling. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, a large amount of flames descended from the sky like an unstoppable natural disaster. They burned all the buildings below, and the entire capital was set ablaze. Just as Tian had said, after he woke up, this world needed to be rebuilt, and it had to start with the capital. But, oh. Why are you doing this? Why won't you let us off? Lord G, we are your loyal servants. The demons below screamed incessantly. The huge capital had been set ablaze, so they naturally could not be spared. I'm sorry for the speed. I'm about to build a new world, and I don't need inferior creatures like you to die for me like my mother did. Dusk's eyes glowed as he looked at the fireballs that kept falling from the void. Actually, he did it on purpose. Although Dustless needed to be eliminated, the other monsters were also a huge problem. Aya. You've really let me watch a good show. Dustless's cold voice suddenly came from all directions. Dusk's expression changed when he heard it. He immediately released his powerful aura, trying to find out where Dustless was. About 10 seconds later, Dusk's cold gaze shot straight to the sea of fire in front of him. The voice came from this sea of fire. With such a scorching flame, even a water-type monster would not be able to survive. He should have been vaporized in an instant. But, why is this happening? Dusk could not help but clench his fist as he looked at the flickering black figure in the sea of fire. Cold sweat dripped down his forehead. The attack just now was considered his full strength. If he could not defeat Dustless with his full strength, Dusk had no other plan to deal with Dustless. What's with your shocked expression? You can't be thinking that this kind of small fire can kill me, right? Sorry to disappoint you. These flames at most make me feel that the sky is a little hot. A moment later, Dustless walked out of the sea of fire unscathed. His entire body was intact, except for some sweat on his forehead. As he said before, he only felt that it was a little hot. Who are you? Dusk stared at Dustless without blinking. His confidence had been severely damaged. Looks like you're out of tricks. I wanted you to play with me a little more. Dustless was rather disappointed. If this kid still had a trump card, he would not have wasted his breath. Your performance just now was just a so-so. Now, it's my turn to play with you. The moment his voice fell, Dusk felt a deep sense of unease, but he did not know why. In short, he was very uneasy, and his heart was very restless. Retreat. Without any hesitation, Dusk turned around and ran for his life. He turned into a gust of cold wind and ran for his life. It was not easy for him to revive. Was he going to be killed before he could do anything? Dusk could not accept this. However, escaping in front of Dustless was useless. Dusk's path was quickly blocked. A huge figure blocked his way. Even the sky was crushed, and there was no light. What the hell is this? Dusk looked at the huge figure in front of him and roared in a daze. This was because he felt an extraordinary aura from the huge figure in front of him. It was definitely not something that a human, monster, or onmyoji could possess. Dustless at this moment was a creature in a completely different realm. Chapter 68. Bang! Caw caw caw. A loud noise rippled out as if something had broken. The white Leviathan was overjoyed and said excitedly, I told you, how can a barrier stop me? F***CK. With a sudden change of topic, the white Leviathan's expression turned constipated. Something had indeed exploded, but Dustless's barrier was still there, and it was self-evident what it meant. It's your move that can't hold on anymore, idiot. Dustless pointed at the stable sky. It was motionless, flashing with a blue light, as if it had existed since ancient times and would never be extinguished. Wuchen then said slowly, you don't have to feel inferior. After all, this is an enchantment that can withstand Wang Su's flash. Not to mention you, even if you search the whole world, I reckon no one can break it. The white Leviathan was silent. Now that things had come to this, it had completely admitted defeat. In front of Dustless, not to mention defeating him, even if the White Leviathan wanted to kill him, without Dustless's promise, it was impossible to do so even if the White Leviathan had the means to do so. The gap was too big, at least as big as a few dimensions. Before I die, I want to ask a question. The White Leviathan looked at Dustless without moving. Ask away. Dustless smiled generously. How did you find me? The White Leviathan stared at Dustless. This was what it was most puzzled about. If it came from the land or the sea, it would be understandable if Dustless found it. After all, it was too big of a target. However, what made the White Leviathan unwilling was that it had swum over from the deep sea. The White Leviathan was exhausted, and in the end, it was all for naught. It seems that you won't die in peace if I don't make this clear. Dustless stared at the White Leviathan's longing expression and did not hide it. He said directly, "This has something to do with my new ability." You got a new ability? Not only was the White Leviathan speechless, but Keely and the others who were imprisoned were also speechless. They all rolled their eyes at Dustless. This guy already had enough abilities, and every one of them was abnormally powerful. Now, he had obtained a new ability. His dog's hit luck was too good. I replaced the green dragon and took over his body. The current me can be said to be the third-generation green dragon. Dustless spoke the truth. His calm words brought great shock to everyone. He had never heard of such a thing before. To think that he could forcefully suppress the green dragon and even obtain his authority. This was unheard of. You even obtained his ability. No wonder. The White Leviathan came to a sudden realization. It was probably because of this Dustless that he was able to find him so quickly. Indeed, it's a pretty good ability. Dustless smiled and said with satisfaction, I can control all the plants on Earth. They can be said to be my eyes. Do you know what this means? I know. The White Leviathan nodded solemnly. The richest plants on Earth were gathered near the Amazon basin. These could be said to be Dustless's eyes. How could he not be discovered? The White Leviathan thought that Dustless would not be able to find him even if he searched the entire planet. Do it. After understanding the cause and effect, the grudge in the White Leviathan's heart disappeared. He looked at Dustless with an incomparably magnanimous gaze. Swoosh swoosh swoosh, the energy ball in Dustless's hand spun at high speed. The waves of destruction made one tremble in fear. This time, there was no longer any compassion. Previously, he still had hope and planned to recruit all the dragons. Now, it seemed that it was best to kill them all. Boom boom boom. With a flick of his finger, the energy ball flew out and landed accurately on the White Leviathan's body. With a loud bang, the huge body instantly turned into ashes. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Time flew by like a white steed. In the blink of an eye, 7 days had passed. On a beach near Midgar, the weather was unbelievably hot today. All the students in the academy had come to the beach for a vacation. The coast within a few hundred meters was filled with laughter. In such a huge academy, there was only one male, Dustless. It was simply a male paradise. How does it feel? It's great, isn't it? A group of girls in bikinis swaying in front of your eyes. TSK TSK. The dean of the academy moved closer to Dustless. A wretched laughter came out of her mouth. Her laughter gave one goosebumps. When one looked up, one would drool. She said excitedly, if I were you, I would die of happiness. It's so great. You're going to die soon. I advise you to find a place to lower your body temperature first. Otherwise, you might die suddenly. Dustless ridiculed, feeling unusually speechless. Looking around, the dean's face was flushed. She was panting like a cow. Her nose was bleeding, and her eyes were staring straight. He was really speechless. If it was a handsome guy, it would be fine. After all, there were countless girls who were infatuated with him. However, to be able to reach the level of the school's dean, who was on the verge of death, was simply a weirdo. Speaking of which, how are your preparations going? Dustless changed the topic, fearing that the seriously lesbian dean would bring up the topic of bikinis again. He said in a low voice, I don't have much time to prepare for you. The integration that Dustless was talking about was the unification of this world. It's almost done. 70% of the countries are interested in joining us. The dean said proudly. She had all the Ds in the world under her control. The dragons and other heretical creatures had also been eliminated, and the weapons of the human race could barely keep the Ds in check. Therefore, she was now the dominant force. That's good. I will be leaving soon. Dustless heaved a sigh of relief. He had been delayed for a few days because of the matter regarding the dean. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 69. On the plane to the kingdom of Lusitania, Dustless and the others were sitting comfortably in the first-class cabin, staring at the clouds outside the window. What's wrong? You don't seem to be paying attention, Ulysse, who was sitting beside Dustless, asked worriedly. Nothing, Dustless answered casually, then asked, Claudia has told you about me, right? Ulysse was silent. She knew Dustless was not an ordinary person, but she did not expect his identity to be far more bizarre than she had imagined. Do you still need to say it? Marry a chicken and follow the chicken, marry a dog and follow the dog. Wherever you go, of course I will follow. Ulysse suddenly smiled sweetly. I'll follow you, teacher. Sitting on the other side of Dustless, Kodo Kirin also expressed her stance, and purposely moved closer to Dustless to take advantage of him. You're all willing to part with your loved ones. Dustless rubbed Kodo Kirin's head, and the girl lay on his lap. He continued absent-mindedly, you still have your brother, right? Him. Ulysse suddenly thought of Jobert, then shook her head gently and said, as long as he's happy alone. Are you sure? Dustless asked. I'm a princess, after all. Do I look like a woman who goes back on her words? Ulysse looked at Dustless angrily, then blushed. Besides, we've already done it as husband and wife. What choice do I have other than to follow you? That's true. Dustless smiled, then looked speechlessly at the white-haired girl who was eating snacks in front of him. What's up with this girl? The person in front of him was Alphalia. I've already helped her with the withdrawal procedures at LoveLore Black Academy. Alphalia will be with us from now on. Claudia opened her sleepy eyes and smiled at Dustless. Isn't this a great benefit? You've taken in Ulysse, and you even have a maid to warm your bed. TSK, I'm envious of your life. Who would believe that Ulysse would be so considerate? Dustless shook his head. Sure enough, as he had guessed, Ulysse immediately pinched his waist a few times, causing Dustless to grimace in pain. How many women do you have around you? Ulysse grumbled. There were Kirin, Claudia, and Sylvia who was flirting with Dustless. Including herself, there were 4 of them. Dustless didn't answer. If she knew that he had countless female confidantes in his system, he wondered what she would think. By the way, what do you think? Dustless looked at Claudia. He looked into the girl's clear eyes and said seriously, Claudia, we'll be leaving soon. As for the Lion Heron Star Martial ceremony, I can only apologize. I don't have time to wait until next year. If it was a few months, Dustless could wait, but if it was next year, then forget it. Heartless man. Claudia pouted and complained, but there wasn't much anger on her face. She rolled her eyes and then smiled charmingly. She leaned over to Dustless and kissed him on the cheek. "How about we have a child?" "Sure." Dustless nodded and agreed very quickly, but his brows unconsciously furrowed. "If it's possible, then I'm naturally willing. It's just that I've only had one daughter for countless years." At his level of strength, his body had changed greatly. Dustless was no longer a human. His body was filled with enormous power, and it was quite difficult for him to have children like a normal person. Of course, once a child was born into the world in the future, he or she would surely inherit Wu Chen's world-shocking strength. This was the benefit of the descendant of an expert. They would usually possess extraordinary natural talent, but the conditions for their birth were extremely harsh. The plane flew between the blue sky and white clouds. The weather was warm and gentle, so they smoothly arrived at their destination, the kingdom of Zatannia. When Dustless and the others got off the plane, there was a sea of people. If it weren't for the guards blocking them, the entire plane would have been surrounded. "Lady Ulysses. Lord Dustless. You two are really a match made in heaven." The citizens excitedly called out Dustless and Ulysses' names. Because of their victory in the Star Phoenix martial ritual, the two of them were already world famous, especially in the kingdom of Zatannia. "Damn it, it must be that bastard royal brother." Ulysses clenched her teeth. Their group had rushed back secretly, and almost no one knew. They had only informed Yobert, and now the whole city was in an uproar. He must have leaked the news. It must have been hard on your royal brother to make such a big commotion. Dustless looked out of the airport. The red carpet seemed to extend endlessly. "No matter what, your brother didn't mean any harm." Dustless patted Ulysses' shoulder. He knew that Yobert loved Ulysses very much. The few of them got on the welcoming car. The surrounding crowd immediately took the initiative to open up a path, loudly shouting Ulysses' name. "You are really popular." Claudia gazed at the excited crowd outside the car, and the light in her eyes suddenly became hesitant. If it weren't for the corporate consortium, this group of citizens would probably live a happier life. From a certain point of view, the corporate consortium was a parasite that squeezed the entire human race dry. "Don't worry, when I leave, I will change this world." Dustless's words made Ulysses beam with joy, but Claudia immediately looked over, because her mother was the top executive of the corporate consortium, Milky Way. Chapter 70. If you want to kill me, then kill me. There's no need for such sarcasm. Human Courtyard's not sized up Dustless in an extremely unfriendly manner. Her eyes were filled with the calmness of someone who had seen through life and death. After living for hundreds of years, she was already prepared to face death calmly. "Oh, you're very carefree." Dustless smiled slightly. He could not help but look at her in a different light. Some people, such as himself, cared more about their lives the longer they lived. "But I don't think I said I was going to kill you, right?" Wu Chen abruptly changed the topic. Upon hearing this, Imperial Courtyard's not immediately cast a startled look. "What exactly do you mean?" "Of course, that's only if you're not the only one. The others in Human Courtyard's family won't be so lucky." Dustless's face was filled with murderous intent. "You're going to let me go?" Human Courtyard's Not's heartbeat quickened. Her face was filled with suspicion. They were on opposing sides, so they should not rest until one of them was dead. Right now, they should be taking advantage of the opportunity to eliminate Human Courtyard's family. Could it be? Human Courtyard's Not seemed to have thought of a certain possibility. Her face instantly turned red. "Don't worry, I have no intention of taking advantage of you," Dustless reminded her loudly. "Besides, is there a need to find an old woman who's lived for hundreds of years?" "You." Crack, 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 crack. Human Courtyard's not clenched her fists tightly. This bastard's cheap mouth was really asking for a beating. Every time he opened his mouth, it was hurtful. If you have something to say, then say it. I don't want to be in the same space as someone like you. It's uncomfortable. Human Courtyard's not clenched her teeth, suppressing her anger. Then I'll make it short. Dustless organized his thoughts, then said slowly, although we have different standpoints, there's one thing I agree with. Demons are evil existences. To humans, demons are monsters that devour humans without spitting out their bones. These creatures that live in the darkness cannot see the light of day. Once they're exposed, they'll endanger the order of human society. Upon hearing this, Human Yusin had a strange expression on her face. If these words had come from a human, she would have understood. After all, humans were afraid of monsters. However, Dustless was a serious big monster, and he was currently the most powerful monster in Japan. It was really thought-provoking for him to say such words. Outside the window, the territory of the Imperial Academy was surrounded by verdant hills and limpid waters. Even the air carried the fragrance of nature. After a moment of silence, Dustless said something shocking. Actually, I also think that demons shouldn't exist in this world. Aren't you still alive and kicking? Human Yuan said coldly, and your subordinates. Now that you've defeated Lord Qingming, all the demons in Japan should be following your lead, right? I'm different from those monsters. Dustless shook his head, then said in a serious tone, that's why, in order to maintain the number of demons, the Imperial Academy's existence is necessary. Human Yuan was not stupid. Her pretty face froze slightly as she stared at Dustless in disbelief and asked, you're planning to use us to destroy the demons? You can say that. Dustless nodded lightly. The number of demons and onmyoges must be maintained at a certain level. It's best for both sides to maintain a delicate balance where no one can suppress the other. If all of you Human Yuan are killed, the number of onmyoges will drastically decrease. When that happens, no one will be able to stop the demons. When that happens, it'll definitely be a disaster for human society. The corners of the Imperial Court's mouth twitched. Her face was full of confusion. Frankly speaking, she really couldn't understand Wu Chen's thoughts. What exactly was this guy planning? As a demon, he had to control the number of demons. It's fine if you don't understand. There are some things that you can't get involved in. Dustless turned into a puff of green smoke and left. He went to the other places of the Imperial Academy alone. Generations of families had been attacked by Dustless. The results were self-evident, all of them had died in battle. Only a small number of the Imperial Academy's leaders had survived. To control the number of demons, it was only natural that the number of onmyoges had to be controlled as well. About a day later, Gumi was flying in the airship above Kyoto. You're leaving. After hearing that Dustless was leaving, Ox Spirit and the others were stunned. Gumi had been at its peak after killing Ho. Now that Dustless was suddenly leaving, it was as if Gumi had fallen from the clouds to hell. That's right. I've already dealt with the trivial matters that needed to be dealt with. There's nothing left to linger on. Dustless looked down at Kyoto. After Ho was killed, Kyoto was in ruins. Now, people were busy rebuilding it. Ox Spirit. Dustless suddenly turned his head to look at Ox Spirit and said, from now on, you're the next leader of Gumi. You must be joking. Ox Spirit shook his head like a rattledrum and said stubbornly, I'm already old. I'm not suitable for the position of General of Gumi. The position of General belongs to none other than Lord Dustless. If I say you're suitable, then you're suitable. Dustless reprimanded him with a straight face. Only then did Ox Spirit tactfully shut his mouth. If he continued to quibble, Dustless would flip out. Before I leave, I'll strengthen your lifespan and abilities. The Imperial Academy's Heart Knot has an unlimited lifespan. I'll have to let you hold on for at least a few thousand years. Dustless muttered to himself. Ox Spirit had mixed feelings when he heard that. He had originally planned to do his best to help Dustless move forward. He didn't expect the day to come so soon. What is Lord Dustless's ambition? Prostitute Mao looked at him with mixed feelings. She didn't feel good about it. Dustless was also a little confused when he heard that. He couldn't give a definite answer to this question because he didn't have an answer himself. Who knows? Maybe I'll stop when I can't walk anymore. After returning to Nuliang Gumi and resting for a night, the next morning, everyone was surprised to find that Dustless, Nuliang, and Ruotsai had disappeared. You're tuning in to the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.